Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome to this set of presentations and conversations, which are essentially about accelerating the circular economy in Ireland. I do also want to talk about Irish manufacturing research and the fact that we have introduced an innovation platform called CirCulÉIRE, which is the national platform for circular manufacturing. And it's a combination, it's a private-public partnership funded by the government, the Environmental Protection Agency, Climate-KIC, and a number of industry players who are embarking on a journey to discover exactly how to accelerate the deployment of the circular economy in their businesses and in the country. Okay. So not to make too many assumptions that people actually understand the difference between what's traditionally called a linear economy and a circular economy. So first of all, you know, a linear economy is where products essentially are manufactured. There's not much emphasis on reclaim or recycling, and the product is usually disposed in waste or landfill. The circular economy places much more emphasis on, first of all, manufacturing the product as environmentally responsibly as it can, using renewable energy, using recycled material, recovering waste material. The design of the product then is created in a way that it's easy to maintain and repair, and then ultimately the obsoleted product can be remanufactured and brought back into the system with recovery of finite elements, etc. So it's a very virtuous circle from an environmental viewpoint. Obviously, a circular economy generates much less waste, much lower emissions, which has a significantly better impact on the economy. Just going in this morning, I was thinking about some of the comments my colleague Barry made yesterday about mobile phones. This year there will be 1.5 billion mobile phones sold in the world. Over the last 5 years, there is enough mobile phones sold for every man, woman and child on the planet. And if you think about a mobile phone, they're all small little rectangular glass covered devices, but they're all very different. And you know, that creates a huge problem. In Ireland today, they estimate there's over one phone per person, man, woman and child in Ireland, sitting in a drawer waiting to be recycled because the products are cycling through so quickly. And the scariest statistic of all is that the average replacement life of phones is reducing. So you can see the cycle of buy a new phone, buy a new phone, buy a new phone, and you can also see the problem where people are holding on to their old phones and not doing a whole lot with them. They can be recycled. The design isn't very conducive towards recycling, and that's a huge problem when you think about the challenge for that product line alone. So I just wanted to make those points. You know, in terms of the goal for zero emissions, and this is from the MacArthur Foundation, the plan obviously is to achieve zero emissions by 2050. But because so many emissions are created by products, 45%, the belief is that if we can truly deploy circular economy principles, we can achieve a 45% reduction to get to zero net emissions in 2050, which would be a fantastic and worthy achievement. So how are we doing in Ireland? You know, what's the circularity gap look like? Well, there's over 100 million tonnes of raw material used in production in Ireland at the moment. And, you know, there's a conservative estimate that if we could save 5% of that raw material through using recycled material, there's well over 2.4 billion euro savings to be had in the value delivery process in Ireland. It's easy to say that. As you can imagine, it's very hard to do that. It needs a tremendous level of collaboration, coordination of stakeholders, regulators, industry players, etc. And to a large extent, that's one of the things CirCulÉIRE is trying to address. How do we bring it about? How do we develop circularity knowledge? How do we build capacity and capability in the research organizations, in the industry players, etc.? And how do we actually address the implementation gaps so that it's not just conversations, it's a very scientific-driven, practical implementation. So where's Ireland currently ranked? So relatively, it's not a great story. Our current circularity rate in terms of recycling material is about 1.6%. The EU average is at 11.7%, so we're languishing significantly below Europe. And you can see the Netherlands is leading at 30%. So, you know, depending on how you look at it, there's a great opportunity there. There should be low-hanging fruit for us to go after. And, you know, if you look at the graph in the bottom right, our rate of improvement has been relatively flat. So, you know, we're hoping through the launch of CircUléire we can really kickstart this approach to implementation of the circular economy in Ireland. I just want to talk about circular economy themes because it can be a bit of a vague concept sometimes, but procurement is key. So whether it's public procurement or private procurement, you know, one of the key issues is for people who are responsible for buying stuff is to make sure there's a high level of recycled content in products that they purchase. Obviously, you know, if that's done at a public level through governments, they can really drive a signal change in the supply base. You can't win a large government contract if you're not participating in circular economy goals, if your products don't have a high level of recycled material. So that's happening in Europe. A lot of countries are doing that. Italy, I know from my own experience, are very good at that. They've introduced a lot of these constraints up to 5 years ago. Production, obviously using renewable energy is a very important aspect of it. Minimizing waste, which obviously has been done through the years with deployment of lean manufacturing principles, but also the recovery of any waste material in the factory environment, and then the recovery of obsolete products, waste material through reverse logistics, and bring that back into the production process. Design is extremely important, and this is probably one of the most challenging areas. You know, I mentioned the mobile phone, but there's lots of products that are not really designed for maintenance and repair. You know, if you think of it years ago, durability and longevity used to be a characteristic that a lot of manufacturers would advertise. Now not so much. You know, in more affluent societies, we're less concerned about how long a product lasts. We're more concerned about its functionality, or its design, or its overall appeal. And that's a big issue. So one of the challenges is, can we change the design of products to make them more easily to maintain, more serviceable, and ultimately last a lot longer? That then reduces the amount of materials that are used in consumption, which would have a huge benefit on the environment. But that is a significant challenge for a lot of OEMs. Then the market. So you know, traditionally, again, in more affluent societies, you know, we want to own stuff. You know, we all want our own cars, our own houses, etc. But there is a growing trend where product as a service is becoming a more acceptable concept. You know, Uber was mentioned yesterday, a significant disruptor in terms of car ownership, but there's lots of other models where people are beginning to see, I don't need to own this. Maybe I can use it as a service. Again, it's a very, very different business model, but it's a very, very favorable business model from a circular economy viewpoint, because the end-of-life responsibility is then with the company who's providing the product as a service, which is much better because they have much better means and infrastructure to manage the end-of-life obsolescence challenge, as opposed to us, you know, stuck with our 10-year-old washing machine, for example. You know, what do you do with it, etc. Pick any product. So they're the main themes that circular economy is looking at in terms of trying to change and implement. So I'll talk briefly. This is the Irish Manufacturing Innovation Platform. It's called National Platform for Circular Manufacturing. Big name. CircUléire is the brand. And you know, there's a few things I want to say. First of all, I want to applaud we have 39 companies involved in this actively, and we have 5 late-stage startups, which we've also included to demonstrate that you can launch a business and have a high degree of compliance with circular economy. What I want to say about these companies is they're pioneers. You know, it would be very easy for the companies to wait and see, well, what's going to happen with regulation, what's going to happen with legislation. You know, this sounds a bit of a fad, I'll see what happens. these companies are engaging and they're actively trying to change the way they're doing business, not because they have to, because they believe it's the right thing to do. And it's tremendous to work with them, and they are truly visionary and they're pioneers, and we're delighted to work with them. Just in terms of geographical representation, we have good representation around Ireland. There's 26 manufacturing sites. I mentioned the late stage ventures. We also have multi-sectoral representation, which is great because companies in different industries will have significantly different challenges addressing those primary 4 themes in the circular economy. So we're learning a lot as we work through the different multi-sectoral efforts from all of those members participating right across the country. These are the 5 key elements that we're engaged in CircULÉIRE. Awareness raising obviously is very important. You know, yesterday there was a conversation about Industry 5 as a new idea, and it's integrating a lot of circular economy ideas and concepts. Industry 4 only really got formalized and developed in 2011. So there's an awful lot of, you know, rapid change in conversations that sometimes are hard for businesses to keep up with, to understand, hold on a minute, exactly what should I be addressing here? So knowledge sharing is very important. Capacity building, both in IMR, you know, we're continuing to build our sustainability team, hiring world-class researchers, also with the companies, helping them to train and understand what's actually required to deploy circular economy, design principles, process challenges, etc. We felt supporting new ventures was very important under CircULÉIRE, because it's really important to see how new companies, almost starting with a blank sheet, can take these challenges and implement them in a very successful business. So we were delighted to partner with Tangent and Trinity to run that program under CircULÉIRE with 5 companies, which had some excellent ideas. And Geraldine will go into more detail in that conversation later on, exactly what's going on in CircULÉIRE in a lot more information. I just want to give, it's in my own humble opinion, my perspective on the challenges and some of the enablers in the circular economy. The cost of recovery, and I know from a previous life working for an OEM, it's easy to talk about it, but most businesses are designed to push product out into the market. That's the way their distribution model works. They're not designed to take product back in and have a reverse logistics concept, and that's quite expensive. Because the high volume distribution model works to retailers, but trying to collect individual products back from individual customers is a very expensive proposition. So it really does challenge profitability as you launch into that and figure out how would I actually do that. On the positive side, and it's more from a consumer perspective, the product as a service is gaining more traction in the marketplace. One of the great things about that is the initial outlay. You know, cars are becoming very expensive now. People are really thinking, do I really need to buy a car? Can I buy an e-bike? Can I rent a car? Can I borrow a car? So the idea of using a service as opposed to having to own a product is gaining more traction, which is very positive. It challenges companies, obviously, to figure out how do they play in that new business model, but they are the challenges of the way the economy is developing in terms of using circular economy design principles. Availability of recycled material is a challenge, certainly, and again, it's as businesses scale, the infrastructure and the investment in plants and capacity to produce vast volumes of recycled material just isn't there at the moment. So, you know, some companies are saying, yeah, I'll use more recycled material, I just can't get my hands on it. And in fact, it's very scarce, and in fact, it's very expensive. So there is this kind of scaling challenge still as companies figure out how do they access enough raw material that is truly recycled to comply with some of the procurement guidelines they might see from government sectors, for example. On the flip side of that, companies are discovering if they can master that scale challenge and figure out how to recover some of their end products, they realize that they're beginning to develop a closed loop supply chain, which is extremely resilient and almost shockproof, as you know, many companies have discovered with the current pandemic. Their supply chains are not that resilient and that robust, and you know, they were making assumptions on how easy the supply chains would operate, and they found they're very, very easy to be disrupted with a challenge like COVID-19. Product quality is another significant challenge for circular economy, because we all like new shiny products, but you know, as more and more recycling happens and remanufacturing happens, we have to adjust our perspective that a remanufactured product has the same guarantee as a new product, or a product with a high level of recycled content is also under the same guarantee as a new product. Now, attitudes have changed recently, but initially this was a significant challenge, especially for complex products or high-value products. However, purchasing sentiment is changing, and we can probably see that in younger members of society who are, you know, very happy to wear vintage clothing, recycled clothing. They see it as the right thing to do. So there's an increased social responsibility in buying behaviour in society, and it's probably coming from the younger members of society, but I think it's spreading, and it's becoming a more broader influence, which is very encouraging. Lastly, I just want to say we have an excellent speaker lineup. It is a mixture of physical speakers who are here today and virtual speakers. Because of COVID, obviously, some people felt they preferred to communicate to the audience virtually today, which is entirely acceptable. And the good news is we have some great expertise who know infinitely more on this subject than I do. I just wanted to give you an introduction and explain to you what IMR is doing in the space. And I will thank you for your attention this morning. I'll leave it at that. I'm going to hand over now to Leslie Carberry, who is the head of circular economy for the Department of Environment, Climate Action and Communications. And Leslie is going to communicate with us virtually this morning. Okay? Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Les Carberry. I'm the Principal Officer in the Circular Economy Unit in the Department of the Environment. And my unit was established last year with a mandate to provide a whole of government approach to the circular economy across all departments and all policy areas of government. I'd like to talk to you today about where we see the circular economy developing over the next decade, where we're starting from, how we want to reach our goals, and also briefly what the circular economy is about and why we should be looking to achieve it. So starting off with the circular economy, the what and the why. So when we talk about the circular economy, we mean an economy that keeps resources in use for as long as possible, that extracts the maximum value from those resources while they're in use, that then at the end of their life can recover and regenerate those products for reuse again in new products and materials. Essentially, it's about closing the loop on our consumption and production model, so that instead of take, make, waste linear model, where we extract resources, put them into products which we use once and then dispose of them possibly before the end of their useful economic life, that we have a regenerative model which minimizes resource extraction, maximizes the value of goods to users and consumers, and then provides through circular design for the easy recovery of raw materials from those products and their reuse again. So that's the what of the circular economy. Then why is this something that we should be aiming to achieve? Well, there are a number of reasons for this. For example, our current patterns of consumption and production along that again take, make, waste linear model are a huge driver of climate change. Resource extraction, the production and consumption of materials are a large source of greenhouse gas emissions, and changing those unsustainable patterns is a key part of climate action. And then just in very basic terms, we are simply consuming too much at the moment. for the world to sustain our appetite for goods and materials. If we continue along our current level of consumption, there would need to be 3 Earths by 2050 to supply all the raw materials that we would need for our goods and products. Again, that is not sustainable. And as we look towards the next decade and beyond that, one of the challenges for companies, but also countries, will be competition for an increasingly scarce amount of raw materials. So being able to adapt to the circular economy, being able to close material loops, rely on shorter, more sustainable supply chains, isn't just an environmental issue. It's not even just an economic issue, but it's also a strategic issue. And those companies and businesses that can adopt a circular economy will have a competitive advantage in the years to come. So I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about where government would like to see the circular economy in Ireland by 2030. What we're looking to achieve is that we will be well on our way towards achieving a systemically circular economy. And when I say systemically circular, what I mean is that circular economy principles are deeply embedded in all our patterns of production and consumption. That the circularity is something which is an intrinsic feature of sectors across the economy. And so some things that would require would mean a real embrace of design for circularity. So that's design that allows for easy repair during the lifetime, a more durable product, a product that can be more easily disassembled and reused at the end of its life. A significant amount of waste associated with goods and products is baked in at design stage. So circular design is a key component of achieving the circular economy. It also means looking at new ways of how we use goods and interact with the products in our day-to-day lives. So for example, changing to a model of products as a service where we don't own the product, we rent it, and the supplier of that product is responsible for its maintenance and upkeep over its lifetime, leading to one would hope, a more durable and robust product. Greater use of the sharing economy, so reuse of a single product or shared use of a pool of common products. Again, this is already happening on any number of digital platforms. An increasing role for remanufacturing. So this is where a good during its economic lifespan is taken back, and effectively there's a deep retrofit and reassembly so that it extends the product life again, so that this becomes a key part of the maintenance life cycle of a product. And particularly for higher value products, this makes economic sense because replacing highly technical components, say for example in the aviation or the automotive sector, before the end of their lifespan is highly wasteful and economically costly. But equally, you don't want to see those products fail in use. So the remanufacturing is also a key component of the circular economy. Again, we hope that by 2030, the repair sector in Ireland has grown from where it is, and that repair and getting your goods resurfaced rather than being thrown out is a key part of how, or is a normal part of how we all will interact with the goods that we own on a day-to-day basis. So obviously, repair is already something that happens on a day-to-day basis already. Getting a pair of shoes repaired, getting a phone that has had the screen cracked repaired. This isn't a new phenomenon, but really where we have products that will be more repairable and more durable, we should really be doing everything we could to encourage consumers to look at repair as a first option rather than replacement. The patterns of distribution of products could also be looked at. So reverse logistics could play a large role in retail, for example, in relation to packaging, so that instead of say food and drinks being delivered in single-use disposable items, that they would be delivered in reusable containers, which could then be taken back by the service provider and cleaned and reused again. And that's a useful business opportunity. Industrial symbiosis will also feature in the circular economy, where the byproducts of one business can be taken away and used safely and sustainably to produce as a material input for another business. As I said, closed loops are very important in terms of keeping resources within the Irish economy for as long as possible. So, for example, let's say, plastic bottles. If we can, on the island of Ireland, recycle used plastic bottles into new plastic bottles, that can effectively be a closed loop on that system, and the value of that material is kept in the country, and the requirement for new raw materials is reduced as well. And as I said, the key point that I'd like to make is that if we are to achieve real circularity, the principles of the circular economy have to be embedded right across the economy, whether that's in manufacturing, retail, the built environment, textiles, any other number of sectors. And so that is a very high level view of where we want to be and where we want the economy to be going by 2030 in terms of circularity. Where are we starting from today? Well, we're not in a good position, to be frank, compared to our EU peers. Our circularity material use rate, which is essentially the share of materials recovered and fed back into an economy, is currently the second worst in the EU. Our circularity rate in Ireland is 1.6% compared to an EU average of 11.9%. And if we look at the best in class EU peer country, that would be the Netherlands, they're at 28%. So we have a huge amount of work to do. And one of the reasons, or well, there are a number of reasons why we are where we are in terms of circularity. Some of that would be to do with the nature of our economy. We're a small, open island economy on the periphery of Europe, and that will have an impact on the ability to keep resources within the economy. But there are also other issues. One of the big factors that we think is something that needs to be addressed is the understanding of the circular economy is poor, or in fact, in some cases, just isn't present at all. So we think there's low levels of awareness about the circular economy and how it applies to on a day-to-day basis among households and consumers, among the private sector, and also across policymakers and governments. And looking at kind of successful examples of countries that are implementing a circular economy model, one of the key things that we have seen is that they all have a cohesive national policy framework. They all have a single policy document which references the circular economy and essentially draws together all the policy levers available to implement circularity. So that's something that we want to address ourselves. I'll be talking about that more shortly. How will we achieve circularity in Ireland? A key component is Ireland's membership of the EU and the EU single market. As a small open economy, our ability to influence global manufacturing and production standards through unilateral action is limited. But as a member of the world's largest trading bloc, which is fully committed to circularity, we have significant leverage through that organisation. And a key strand of the EU's actions in terms of the circular economy is the Circular Economy Action Plan, which launched in March 2020 and which is being implemented at the moment. It aims to decouple economic growth and the well-being of EU citizens from environmental and climate impacts. And that's key to circularity, really. It's about saying we can enjoy increased economic growth and ongoing well-being for our citizens in a way which doesn't rely on endless resource consumption, which is unsustainable. A key element of the action plan is the Sustainable Product Policy Initiative, and the action plan is also in addition to other EU laws that are relevant to the circular economy, for example, such as the Single-Use Plastics Directive. And looking at some of the initiatives that will be coming down the track in the years to come, a lot of these will have direct impact in terms of improving circularity. So a review on how the EU ships waste, proposals around the green claims that can be made by companies, so to avoid greenwashing and give consumers more certainty in terms of when they are trying to choose a circular product, that they can rely on what the claims are made by the manufacturers. New rules on sustainable textiles. A huge volume of textiles are currently being exported from the global north to the global south, often where they're then ended up either, if they can't be sold in the markets in the global south, then they end up in landfill there. So tackling that and tackling the global north's addiction to fast fashion is certainly an important part of achieving the circular economy. As I said, the Sustainable Products Policy Initiative will be an important strand of this whole process. This will involve revising the Eco-Design Directive. The EU Eco-Design Directive currently relates to mainly the energy performance of electronic or white goods. The scope of the directive will be expanded significantly to apply to more categories of goods and to take into account things like durability and reliability and repairability. And once that directive is in place and those standards are in place, it'll mean that for consumers, by default, the products that they are seeing in shops will be more durable, repairable, and reusable. And so the onus will be less on consumers to try and do the right thing and more on the fact that producers will by default have to meet these standards. There'll also be a review on the limits around persistent organic pollutants in waste streams and on packaging and packaging waste in the EU, all of which will contribute to more circularity, more resource efficiency, and less waste production. That's what's happening at the EU level. But as I said before, Ireland is coming from a very low base. We want to catch up and overtake many of our EU peers, and we want to go from being at the bottom of the table in terms of circularity to being towards the top. So to do that, we can't just rely on EU measures because they will benefit all EU member states. We also have to adopt an ambitious national policy ourselves that looks at what the key barriers in Ireland are, addresses them, and looks at how national policy can complement and augment EU level measures. So in 2020, Ireland launched its Waste Action Plan for a Circular Economy, and this document represented a real fundamental shift in how Ireland looked at the whole area of waste management, resource efficiency, and the circular economy. Whereas previously Ireland had focused on meeting its waste management targets at EU level, the Waste Action Plan aims to, while still obviously ensuring that we meet our targets and that waste enforcement remains a priority, that much greater focus is given to achieving sustainable consumption and production patterns and moving towards a circular economy. To do that, it adopts a number of instruments, some economic, some regulatory, some around public awareness. So, for example, it will look at making producers who manufacture and sell disposable products more environmentally accountable for the products that they place on the market. So this would be around eco-modulation, where if you place a product which is hard to reuse or recycle on the market, you will have to pay more for its disposal. It will put for the first time as a condition of waste permits, there will need to be recycling rates achieved by waste operators. So this will mean that there is a direct stake in achieving greater levels of resource efficiency among waste operators than there has been before. We'll use a mix of economic instruments in the forms of levies on single-use items and on waste recovery operations, which are such as incineration, which are lower down the waste hierarchy than recycling. And that's based on the approach that we've taken for the landfill levy and the plastic bag levy in the past, and has proven highly effective in promoting more sustainable behaviours. The first of those instruments that's likely to be introduced is the levy on single-use disposable coffee cups, what's often referred to as a latte levy. And I should point out that these measures aren't seen as revenue raising. Indeed, what we would hope is that any revenue associated with the introduction of these levies falls away quite quickly as people move towards more sustainable alternatives. So, for example, in the case of the latte levy, that it would promote the use of more reusable cups rather than single-use disposable ones. It'll also involve, the Waste Action Plan will also involve more direct action from government in terms of how government spends its own budget. So in terms of improving green public procurement, and the Waste Action Plan also provides for targets on reuse, repair, and material consumption. And this is something that will be taken forward in the National Waste Management Plan, which is the detailed operational document around waste management in the state, which will be being produced next year. A whole of government circular economy strategy is one of the key deliverables under the Waste Action Plan. Again, this is about providing a single point of reference for all policymakers and actors across the circular economy space, in the private sector, the voluntary sector, the research community, a single document which will set out Ireland's policy ambition, its policy approach, and the direction of travel in relation to circularity. My team is currently finalising the circular economy strategy at the moment, and we hope to publish it in the coming weeks. So the strategy, as I say, will provide a national policy framework. It will also support and implement measures to reduce Ireland's circularity gap so that our performance compared to our European peers significantly improves by 2030. We aim to raise awareness among business, households and individuals about circular economy, and we'll do that primarily through the establishment of a new national circular economy platform, which will be implemented over the course of 2022. We'll look to support and promote increased investment in the circular economy in Ireland with view to delivering sustainable and regionally balanced economic growth. There are currently a number of funding opportunities that directly target the circular economy in Ireland, such as the EPA's Green Business Fund and my department's Circular Economy Innovation Grant Scheme, which launched this year. However, what we want to look for is more coherence around the various funding initiatives that are available across government, seeing where these can be targeted towards promoting circular economy projects, and crucially to maximising Ireland's drawdown of EU funds for the circular economy, for example, through the EU Life Scheme, which can provide significant funding for environmental and circular economy projects. And finally, the strategy will aim to identify and address the economic, regulatory and social barriers to Ireland's transition to a more circular economy. I've mentioned public awareness as one of the main social barriers, but we also want to look at economic and regulatory issues, for example, or things like liability, insurance for repair, and the VAT treatment of repaired goods as well, so that they can compete on an equal footing with new goods. The way we'll do this is through an open and inclusive dialogue with all sectors, the private, public, voluntary, community and research communities, through the establishment of a circular economy advisory group, which will be set up under the auspices of the strategy, and which we hope to launch next year, and which we will have as wide a membership and engagement as possible. And in addition to the strategy, we're also taking a legislative approach to the circular economy. The Circular Economy Bill was announced earlier this year and is currently being drafted by the department. The Circular Economy Bill will provide a legislative basis for the circular economy strategy, which is actually really important, because what it means is that once the bill is enacted, government will be under a legal obligation to have a circular economy policy in place and to frequently update it. So what that means is that circular economy policy becomes an ongoing priority for governments going forward by law, and that's a really strong signal of intent for how seriously Ireland is taking the circular economy. It also provides the legislative basis for some of those economic instruments that I mentioned before. So around the use of environmental levies and the use of economic instruments to promote circularity, and for the regulatory approach of specifying targets for the use of reused and repaired goods in our National Waste Action Plan, or National Waste Management Plan. So it really is a key piece of legislation in terms of both our overall policy approach, but also our use of economic and regulatory instruments. And then in particular, in terms of the manufacturing sector, one of the things that we'll be looking at is the regulatory regime at the moment for end of waste and byproduct decisions. So these are decisions given by the EPA on where a product produced in one industrial process can be used as either a byproduct in another one, or can be deemed not a waste product at all. And this opens up significant opportunities for greater circularity. What we're doing through the bill is providing the EPA with more tools to allow them to streamline and accelerate their decision-making process. And as I said, the drafting of the bill is underway at the moment. Recently, the Oireachtas Committee on the Environment began with what's known as the pre-legislative scrutiny process on the bill, where they look at what's in the bill, they consider what the bill is trying to do and how it can be improved, and they're currently preparing their report, which will be submitted to the Minister hopefully by the end of the year. and the Minister looks forward to seeing what the committee recommends in terms of amendments to the bill. And pretty much as soon as possible after we receive that report, we'll be looking to publish the bill and enact it as a priority. Thank you. I hope that was very informative.
Thank you very much, Leslie. That's very encouraging to see the progress. We're looking forward to the National Policy Framework and the Circular Economy Bill, which, as Leslie indicated, are going to be published very soon. So great progress from a government perspective there. I'd like to introduce Mary Frances Rochford, who's a Programme Manager from the Environmental Protection Agency, and she's going to give us an overview of the EPA's circular economy activities. So we'll transition over to Mary Frances, who's also a virtual speaker as well. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mary Frances Rochford. I'm the Programme Manager for the EPA's Climate Change and Circular Economy Programme. This morning I'm going to speak to you about the EPA's role in supporting Ireland's circular economy. The EPA works in a number of different ways, set out here in our strategic plan as working through knowledge, regulation and advocacy. And the EPA's work in the area of the circular economy very much transcends each of these areas. This morning, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we are working within the EPA Circular Economy Programme under each of these headings. So just to start off in the area of knowledge, the EPA is the competent authority for the compilation and submission of Ireland's national waste data. So you'll see this on the EPA's website and our waste statistics portal, and also in our national waste summary reports. So you'll see here, this is just a slide to show you Ireland's waste journey over the last 2 decades. And what we see really here is that we've had quite a number of changes over the past few years. You'll see as a start that our municipal waste the quantities have fluctuated over time, very much consistent with our economic progress. So you'll see that we had a peak in the 2006-7-8 time period before falling off during the economic recession. And in more recent years, then we're seeing a continued rise. You'll also see that our the amount of waste that we sent to landfill has decreased over that time period as well. And it's quite striking, and this is very much tied in to our, in particular, to our waste management policies. You'll see also that we have our trends in relation to recycling of waste. So you'll see that in the early noughties, 2001, all the way up through to 2010, that we had quite an increase in relation to how Ireland was recycling its waste into quantities that it was recycling at the time. Before then seeing that we had stabilised in terms generally in relation to the amount of waste that we were recycling, before seeing a fall off in more recent years. This has generally coincided with this fall off has coincided with an increase in the amount of waste that we're sending to energy recovery there. And you can see that 2016, 17, 18, we're having an increase in the amount of waste that we're sending for energy recovery. As I mentioned, the treatment of our waste has been very much influenced by the policy measures that are in place. And you can see quite starkly here the correlation between the amount of waste that we're sending to landfill through the introduction and increase in the landfill levy over the past 2 decades. So you'll see there where we were increasing where our waste, as we were increasing our landfill levy, the fall off then in the amount of waste sent to landfill. And you'll see that our target of 10% out at 2035. So Ireland's waste journey really, as we say, it's been 2 decades of change and moving very much from a time where landfill was the key focus and the key outlet for waste in Ireland, moving now towards an environment where recycling and incineration is the dominant waste treatment for waste in Ireland. And you'll see we're moving up the waste hierarchy. However, definitely more to do, and as we move towards a circular economy, we need to move up towards the top tiers of that pyramid and moving beyond recycling into reducing, reducing, and to definitely increase the amount of waste prevention and to see a decrease in the amount of waste that we're generating in Ireland. So very much this is tied in to the next chapter in terms of waste management in Ireland and moving beyond waste management to resource management, and you will have heard and hear lots more about that today. The next chapter is around the circular economy, and Ireland will face new targets and new reporting requirements in relation to reuse, repair, consumption reduction, food waste, single-use plastics and recycled content. And the EPA's evidence programme in relation to waste data will definitely be gathering and be at the heart of the movement to gathering that data, which will inform Ireland's move to a circular economy. But there are challenges for Ireland in that move, and in terms of our current performance, we see that we are currently meeting all of our current EU targets. So as we look across the various directives, the Waste Framework Directive, Landfill Directive, Packaging Directive, End of Life Vehicles Directive, the WEEE Directive and Batteries Directive, all of these we're happy to say that we have a green light beside them. However, our waste is continuing to grow. We see that our recycling rates, as I showed, are flat or declining, and while our EU targets are generally increasing. We are incinerating more and more waste, and we're heavily reliant on export for recycling. And we also are in the midst of urgent climate and biodiversity crisis. So it's that emphasis to move from waste management to a circular economy. There are opportunities for Ireland, however, when it comes to recycling, and we see that we exported in 509,000 tonnes of packaging waste for recycling in 2019. So you'll see here from this graph the valuable resource that we're exporting and the opportunities that others are gaining from our waste in terms of implementing a circular economy. In particular, for an audience such as yourselves in the production, manufacturing, business community, we see some examples of very clear examples of where there are opportunities for reuse within these sectors, particularly when we look at the packaging waste and the amount of transport packaging within the supply chain. And we see that 35,000 tonnes of corrugated cardboard was sent for incineration in 2019. Very clearly that we have reusable alternatives that are readily available, but it does require the development of circular economy business models to see how we can make that work for us more efficiently. We also see that in terms of plastic wraps and bags. So we have had the recent reintroduction of soft plastic into recycling bins, but we generated 55,000 tonnes of this type of material in 2019. Again, looking to see, are there reusable alternatives available that can be used again, and the opportunities for circular business models in the move to using these types of materials and employing a reverse logistics system. We do see also that we have significant developments in terms of businesses taking that next step in terms of implementing the circular economy, in terms of looking to see where you can develop capacity, be it in relation to reuse and recycling, and how companies across the supply chain can see the benefits of engaging in this system. The EPA also has a regulatory role, as I set out at the start, and for which many people will be most familiar with the EPA. The EPA is an environmental regulator, and we have responsibility in terms of industrial and waste licensing, but also in terms of making determinations on byproducts notifications and end of waste when it comes to implementing the circular economy. To support the circular economy, we're looking at how across our authorisations, how waste prevention can be implemented, and also to keep opportunities to keep materials in circulation for longer, and regulating in a way at all times that is protective of the environment. In terms of our advocacy work, as many of you are aware, we're supporting the CircULÉIRE project in terms through the National Waste Prevention Programme. And this programme reviewed in 2018 to develop a more of circular economy focus has also been reviewed now in more recent times as under the Waste Action Plan for a Circular Economy, where it was identified that as an action that we will reconfigure the National Waste Prevention Programme to make it Ireland's Circular Economy Programme. So it will continue to be led by the EPA, and it will have a designated coordinating role to support the Department Circular Economy Unit in overseeing national, regional and local activities to improve coherence and alignment of national and local activities and ensure maximum impact. So just to share a little bit about what the programme has worked on to date and what will be built upon within the new Circular Economy Programme. The programme has worked through innovation and demonstration, delivering through partnerships and advocacy and communication. And since 2018, we've been focused on 6 key priority areas covering food waste, construction and demolition, plastic, agriculture, resources and raw materials, and local waste prevention. And today I'm just going to take you through some of the recent highlights delivered by the programme in each of these priority areas. So CircULÉIRE is one of the key activities that we've been involved in relation to resources and raw materials. I won't speak in too much detail about that, as many of you are already familiar with the key objective here in terms of the leading manufacturers being committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 20% and also reducing their waste production through joining this national circular economy circular manufacturing platform. We partner with the Rediscovery Centre, who developed a circular economy academy as part of the funding model there. And in 2020, we saw 10 circular economy enterprises through this partnership. We see that we also fund the Community Resources Network in Ireland, and we've supported their members in 2020 to reuse over 18,000 tonnes of material, saving 117,000 tonnes of carbon. In terms of resources that are available for companies, public bodies and members of the public, we have an online resource efficiency tool known as TREE. We saw extensive engagement with and use of that resource over 2020, and also targeting waste, targeting repair of goods. We have the Repair My Stuff online repair directory, which connected more than 800 repair businesses with over 73,000 users in 2020. Moving on to food waste prevention, the focus here looking at reducing waste in households, the hospitality, retail and all along the food production chain. This particular programme contains the National Campaign on Food Waste Prevention, which works through collaboration, impact and measurement. And many of you will be familiar with stopfoodwaste.ie, which is one of the flagship aspects of this initiative. So within the household stream that we look at, public awareness is very much to the fore, looking at and raising that public awareness around environmental and social issues around wasted food to increase action to achieve the national target of a 50% reduction in food waste by 2030. When it comes to supply chain and hospitality businesses, we're looking at standardized measurements and measurement methodology to measure food waste and develop national sectoral benchmarks to be able to build on capacity for action within the supply chain and hospitality area, to take action on food waste prevention through upskilling, and also the development of case studies so people can learn from each other. In terms of plastic, a key focus of the programme has been looking at displacing single-use plastic items through prevention, reuse and recycling actions. One particular area is through our Innovation for a Circular Economy Fund. It's the Green Enterprise Fund, an annual funding call, €650,000 open to SMEs and other enterprises, looking at how we can make the move through innovation to the circular economy. And in 2020, we funded 2 plastic-related projects, one of which looked at innovative manufacturing processes using recyclable reinforced plastic to produce wind turbine blades, and also another one looking at novel solution to recycle waste farm plastics into livestock drinking troughs. So we're keen to see the outcomes and the outputs of both of those projects. In terms of other research, we worked through the Enterprise Ireland Small Business Innovation Research Programme, looking in particular at how we can prevent and reduce soft plastic waste into provision of school meals in Ireland, and there'll be a report on that work shortly as well. Local authority waste prevention really is a key part of the project, and it looks at how we can mobilise and empower communities to make changes for sustainable circular living. In 2020, we funded 20 local authorities to the tune of almost 90,000 to carry out circular economy community initiatives. And we recently just closed the call for 2021, and we'll be happy to be announcing the recipients and the projects under the most recent call shortly. In 2020, we funded 4 social enterprises who were mentored and supported to develop and deliver enterprises in the area of paint reuse. And one area which very much targeting the single-use plastic initiative as well, focusing on public drinking water fonts, where we installed drinking water fonts in 2 public buildings in Drogheda and Dundalk to reduce consumption of single-use plastics. And in 2021, single-use and plastics in public drinking water fonts are a key feature of the award to rolling out what we've learned from the implementation of such fonts and such projects in previous calls. In terms of the construction sector, we work with industry and others to tackle really high volume waste in this critical sector. We see that the construction sector presents a huge opportunity to increase circularity within the Irish economy. And we see that coming through in terms of the work that the EPA does in relation to the end of waste byproduct work, but also we see that in terms of the increasing volume of waste coming through in terms of the data that we're producing for national waste data purposes. In 2020, we've compiled circular construction best practice fact sheets and case studies which are available on the EPA website. And most recently, we've completed a revision of best practice guidelines on the preparation of waste management plans for C&D projects. And this will be published in November 2021. And we will be engaging with stakeholders to roll out and disseminate this guidance, and really would encourage you to reach out to ourselves, to work with us in terms of how this can be implemented, and very much keen to talk through this new guidance to ensure that it's implemented at a large scale on a countrywide basis. We've also worked with local authority prevention network and local authority staff to support training within local authorities in relation to C&D waste prevention. Nearly finished in terms of our priority areas. We have the agricultural sector in particular, and here again, looking at where we can work with the agricultural sector to reduce emissions and to implement best practice to ensure environmental protection, while also assisting farmers to realise the financial as well as the environmental benefits. We see that the smart farming assessments in 2020 resulted in an average greenhouse gas reduction on a farm level of 9%, with savings of over €5,000 per farm. We saw a huge increase in terms of engagement with our smart farming website compared to previous years. And also the smart farming programme was a Sustainable Development Goal champion and engaged extensively through that project as well. Just to finish up, a key deliverable in 2021 centred around green public procurement, and really bringing this initiative to your attention today. It was launched in September. We see that there's guidance for the public sector on to how it can incorporate green public procurement within its tenders. There are 10 criteria sets there as well. As providers into this sector, I'd encourage you to become aware of the guidance that's there in relation to this and what the public sector will be looking for in terms of tender requirements, and also to let you know that we'll be rolling out training for suppliers to be able to meet these tender requirements in the coming months. Again, just before I go, to remind you about the Green Enterprise call that I mentioned during my presentation. As I said, it supports innovators and SMEs to develop and demonstrate new circular economy approaches. The themes, I give the example from our plastic sector, but extends beyond looking at food, construction, resources and raw materials. So it typically goes out in the first quarter, starts with second quarter of the year. So encourage you to look out for that. Thank you very much for your attention this morning. And if you'd like to contact me directly in relation to any aspect of the projects that I outlined today, my contact details are here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary Frances Rochford. That was excellent. A lot of progress there, obviously, from the EPA. It's encouraging to see the decrease in landfill over the past number of years, but probably concerning to see the increase in levels of waste that Mary Frances identified at the start of her presentation. Great to see that green public procurement guideline. I mentioned that earlier in my own presentation. I think this is going to kickstart some of the new behaviours we'd like to see in suppliers. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Andy Kerr, who's the UK and Ireland lead for EIT Climate-KIC. And I'm going to hand over to you now, Andy. Andy is also going to join us virtually. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Andy Kerr. I lead the Ireland and UK activities for EIT Climate-KIC, a big Europe-wide innovation partnership. And we've been working with some of our 400-odd partners across Europe to help mobilise resources, skill sets, to enable businesses, cities, regions, entrepreneurs to deliver sort of transformative climate action. I'm here to speak about the emerging policy landscape post-COP for circular economy from an EU perspective. And what I want to do is just go through four very quick elements. First, I want to just offer a refresh on the EU circular economy, action plans and strategies. Then I'll talk a little bit about the insights that we and our partners have been developing from working both at a national level, but also at a business and a sectoral level. Third, I'll bring forward one example of the sorts of interventions that we need to make all the way down the supply chain or the value chain in order to try and enhance and enable some of the circular economy activities. And finally, I'll leave you with some of the opportunities for the future. So let me start with a quick refresh on the EU circular economy plans. The European Commission adopted the Circular Economy Action Plan back in March 2020. It is one of the main enablers, one of the main building blocks for the Green Deal. And it's an action plan that has a whole suite of initiatives ranging from right up at the front end, how products are designed, all the way down to essentially how you encourage sustainable consumption. And the whole aim of it is to prevent waste, and it's to prevent and to try and retain resources and the value chains associated with those resources within the EU for as long as possible. And so the measures include everything from trying to make sustainable products the norm in the EU. How do we normalize these types of products and services? How do we empower consumers and public buyers to buy these things? There's a very particular focus inevitably on some of the key products and the key sectors that we're talking about, which includes electronics and ICT, batteries and vehicles, packaging, plastics, and so on. But the overall aim is to ensure less waste, and it is also very much set in a way that it has to make it work for people, for citizens, for businesses, for cities, for regions. And the aim overall is to make Europe one of the leaders globally in this space, because that also brings economic value. Now, within that, then there are a set of individual elements of an action plan. There are over 35 initiatives. I'm not going to go through those. Suffice to say that you can go and see how they are being developed, but they are focused both on individual product value chains, but also cross-cutting actions like skills, like funding and finance and so on, that you can track online. I think the key message from us for today, for this morning, is there is a clear priority of the new Commission for deep systemic change here, using transformation, using innovation and the missions that are coming through. there is a clear understanding that we've got to join up the activities around circular economy with the other wider initiatives, the other wider strategies on chemicals, on industrial strategy, on plastics, zero pollution action plans. But I think also from our perspective, looking at how you change whole economic sectors, there's also a real need to link it to the activities up and down the value chain. So from an EU perspective in the bioeconomy, that might be from the forest and biodiversity strategies or the forthcoming common agricultural policies, all the way down to the end users, thinking about the city's mission, which is trying to take 100 cities to net zero by 2030. How do they then develop the products and services, or how can they use the products and services to good effect? So what are the insights that we and our partners have been coming out with over the last 2 or 3 years? I think that the key point we need to make is that we approach these challenges from at a whole system level. In other words, we don't focus just on how do we get the new bit of technology or the new service into the market. We also look at how do we actually enable the market to help it thrive? How do we enable all of the conditions that will actually allow us to take forward and develop systemically whole changes across economic sectors? And that means using a whole suite of levers of change, which is everything from the policy and regulatory landscape, the frameworks, to make new markets. Obviously, there are key areas around education, skills, capabilities across the whole value chain. And then we've got particular levers that we can pull. Public procurement can be used to drive a lot of change. We can be making markets, we can be thinking about how we structure both public funding and private investment to deliver the outcomes we seek within the supply chain. So there's a whole suite of levers of change that we need to be acting on to make the sort of whole system change as we require. So our approach to this model for circular economy for materials is very much about using a portfolio of interventions across the relevant levers of change for that particular system to drive change. And these then are thinking about how do we build new markets, how do we create the new business models, the new funding and finance models, and create new industrial value chains that localize the value, say, within Ireland, so that we can actually capture the economic benefit of doing this whole change. And at the same time, on the social side, the just transition side, we are working on how do you ensure that those people who are economically dependent on fossil fuel and fossil fuel supply chains, how do we find a way of supporting them to make the transition too? So an example of the sort of work that we're doing across Europe, one is these what we call deep demonstrations. So building major portfolios of innovations across different levers of change is working in Slovenia, where essentially we're looking at how we change the whole material production and waste flows across 4 economic sectors. And the aim for that country as a small country is very much about building better prosperity and health going forward. So it's about building essentially an economy of the future. So our experience has taught us that these sorts of solutions for the scale of the challenge, how do you deliver a circular economy, require a very different model of innovation. So broadly, the insights are, the scale is too big and it's too fast to rely on the old linear models of innovation. We need that whole system approach to scale these solutions really rapidly. We found that you can only really make it work if you actually bring forward the co-benefits as well as the narrow technical, whether it's the carbon climate benefits or it's the circular economy benefits, if you capture the whole co-benefit of the action, which means thinking about the skills, thinking about the investment into places, thinking about the jobs that are coming. So those co-benefits are critical. And finally, that you've got to have civic legitimacy. You've got to do it with communities, not to communities. And you've got to have an investment mindset that takes an understanding of what are we trying to achieve over 10 or 15 years. Let's have real clarity of purpose about that. And what we would see, the outcomes of that, we would see are that what we can do is start to make new markets, we can start to build the skill sets, we can bring in the investment so that you can actually capture real value locally, both in the local businesses, but also capturing that for delivering skilled, productive populations, citizens who are going to deliver on that. And the two areas, I guess, that we see real opportunities in this space. One is around the data analytics, data insights, AI type of issues, because there's a huge amount in the data economy that we still have opportunities to exploit. But the other one is on that bioeconomy side and the whole biomaterials, biomimicry, to actually replace existing products with biological sourced products. So let me just give you an example of what we would do in practice to try and make this shift in a value chain, in a supply chain. And the example I'm going to use is one that we're working on in Glasgow City region and Scotland, which is about how do we build a value chain that is localizing the value, taking forestry and wood products right from the start, from the land use, all the way to increasing the amount of wood products being used in the retrofitted buildings and in the new buildings that are going on in there. And when you look at the whole process from the forest creation and the management, creation of the raw wood materials, the processing and manufacture, specification of standards, the design, construction, to the point where we actually have a whole bunch of new homes that are timber framed or that have timber facing. That whole approach, at the moment, there are elements of that already in existence. But what our interest was how do we go in and replace a lot of the single-use products that are in the buildings at the moment? And how do we take it all the way down so that we've got an effective supply chain from start to finish? And what this intervention showed was that it requires thinking and intervention all the way down the supply chain, right the way back to the forest creation and management, so that we've got enough supply of productive timber to make the raw materials, and that the forests are economically and ecologically resilient, all the way through to making sure that we've got investment, private investment into the wood processing and the manufacturing sites, as well as through to the construction, that we're actually specifying products that are going to support that and ensure that we're securing wood products into the buildings themselves. So this is the sort of initiative where we're showing all of the interventions down the supply chain that are required to change that system. And it can be done over a period of not too many years, but it does need that joined up thinking between the public sector and the private sector, between the buyers and the sellers. So let me just finish with a couple of words on the opportunities that we see. So across Europe as a whole, we've got a set of innovation priorities that are coming through. Obviously, we've talked about this need to move to a circular and regenerative economy. That means having industries that are absolutely captured, that want to do it, that are keen to see that transition. And we've got some fantastic examples here in Ireland, and CircUléire has been a really good learning platform for that. We do need better performance metrics. What does it mean to be a circular industry? How do we measure it? How do we measure the value that comes to the businesses, to the citizens most effectively? We can drive that with local action, public procurement from national governments, from subnational governments. So there are ways in which we can drive the markets and make markets in this space. But we also need that wider circular economy piece, which is very much around the sorts of things we're seeing with CircUléire, the learning platforms to share, to learn, to expand that knowledge about what is possible in that space. And that comes with that learning and skills piece. And it comes also with the learning that needs to happen from the policymakers to help frame the frameworks to enable businesses to thrive in this environment. So there's a lot of work going on the practices and tools for the learning, for the measurement tools that engage the mindsets, the behaviors of businesses and citizens. I think I'll leave you just though with our reflection that the biggest opportunity that we see is certainly around agri-food in Ireland, that forest space, the bioeconomy, through into the building space, but also the mobility, the automotive, and the industrial symbiosis, so the plastics, the chemicals, and so on. So there's a suite of real opportunities that we see across Europe that we could also apply into Ireland. And I'll stop there, and I look forward to speaking to you on some of these issues later. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So it was really good to hear from Andy Kerr and Climate-KIC on the European perspective and the work that they're doing in addition to supporting CircUléire in Ireland. What we'd like to do next is switch the focus to hearing from our industry members around their journeys, the drivers, the challenges and the opportunities that they're encountering as they take steps towards embracing circularity. So I'd just like to play a very short video giving highlights from a range of our industry members about why they are embracing circularity and why they're part of CircUléire.
Business collects byproducts from food production, puts it through a separation and refining process to produce refined oil and processed animal protein. These products have many uses in the oleochemical, energy, organic fertilizer, and pet food markets. It's the perfect example of how waste material can be converted into useful and reusable products. The circular economy is important to Dawn Meats because it is based on the principles of reducing, reusing, and recycling of waste.
The Culinary Food Group have sustainability as one of its core pillars. The circular economy is a vehicle where we as a company can achieve all the principles of a circular manufacturing business, and in particular, waste reduction, and therefore reduce the impact on the planet and increase profitability.
Optal Group became a founding member of the CircUléire organisation to provide our solutions in the intelligent supply chain, the circular economy, serialisation and traceability to the members so that they can be utilised to the benefit of all citizens and to humanity.
The circular economy is very important to us here within Johnson & Johnson and in Vision Care in Limerick. Being a big employer in the Limerick area and part of Campus Ireland, which has multiple manufacturing sites across Ireland, having a vision to introduce circularity teams in our organisations is very important to us on our sustainability journey within Johnson & Johnson. Part of our sustainability programme, it's one of the messages that I sell to senior exec teams across J&J is why do this? It's cost X, Y, and Z and CO2, because it's the next step and it's the right thing to do.
The first benefit is securing our supply chains and costs against global headwinds. We also see this as protecting our environment and, more importantly, our company's place in society. We see the circular model as driving increasing competitiveness, which is very important to our customers. Every discard is a cost to our business. We also see this as stimulating innovation and boosting economic growth and jobs.
By adopting a circular model, we can show our customers that we are committed to preserving the environment, to minimising our use of scarce resources, and to improving the world around us. We already use and produce products that are fully recyclable, and we want to expand that further to make sure that all the resources we use in the production of those products fits into a model of circularity.
So we see our clients getting a significant reduction in COGS, in the costs of their material, because we can extend or repurpose devices that are redundant or excess. I don't want to use the word scrap, and we can get them back into the supply chain at much cheaper than the cost of new or newly manufactured product. That's what we do, and so we see it as really important. It is the commercial advantage of our clients that makes it so important to WEEE, because it's how we sell our services.
That's about our future. Climate change is now climate crisis. Paris Accord, New Green Deal,
laying out a path of enormous change. And we're willing to do our part by operating our business in a more sustainable way, but we're concerned for our future. Our business model, the linear supply of materials, will become obsolete. So it's critical for us to understand the circular economy.
By that very act of focusing on turning those waste streams into value streams, that impacts the profitability of the organizations, but then also adds value and passes that value then on to customers. And secondly, the other way is that, you know, turning the, you know, produce and use kind of models, a straight line into circular, you know, means that we're using less resources in a scarce world.
In Ireland, since 2005, we built a very successful recycling economy for the e-waste and battery management system. We have worked with Indigenous recycling facilities here in Ireland, such as K&K Metals Recycling and Irish Lamps, to deliver high-level recycling and recovery. But working under a more circular framework means we can deliver greater opportunities for green tech businesses to get involved. We want to develop more repair and reuse solutions and be able to deliver those solutions to our businesses and Irish consumers and end users.
Is working with other industries, other large companies to see, you know, where we can make savings, learning off each other. So we've made a lot of savings over the last 10 or 11 years here from a CO2 point of view. So we're more than willing to share those, but we're also interested to see what other similar companies have done in terms of reducing energy, CO2 and reducing waste. You know, I think they're the big benefits for us potentially.
So we see a number of benefits coming from our participation in CircUléire. The first of which is that we're part of a large network of like-minded businesses who are all working towards similar goals, all of which has to do with carbon footprint reduction or embedding circularity. The next of which is it gives us opportunities to collaborate with like-minded businesses, and then it helps us with the development of opportunities registers that we can use to identify project opportunities.
So the benefits that we see here in Arista in terms of the engagement and being part of the CircUléire program is it's knowledge. We've learned a lot about circular manufacturing in particular. As I mentioned earlier, the peer-to-peer engagement has been very interesting and very worthwhile. And we've also found that the technical expertise provided through the CircUléire program, through a network of I suppose, IMR and also the different sectors, the technical knowledge we found to be very beneficial.
I suppose there's a bit of a global challenge going on in terms of sustainability in the world today, and getting involved in something like this, I see it as being trying to be part of the solution. And I think it's a good opportunity for Novum to link in with various other companies with similar challenges to try and overcome the global challenge that exists.
To hear from some of those members, and I'm delighted to hand over to Austin Geraghty, Global Health, Safety and Sustainability Senior Director for Hovione Group, who will be joining us virtually.
Good morning. Apologies for not being present today. Geraldine has asked that I present on Hovione's sustainability journey and the challenge for the circular economy. It's not because our journey is remarkable in any way, but it does probably reflect the realities of life. The fact that change takes time, particularly so in a regulated environment. Hovione is what most people would class as small pharma. We manufacture active pharmaceutical ingredients on contract in our facility in Cork for clients of all shapes and sizes. The processes are energy intensive, use a lot of hazardous materials, and are generally regulated by organizations like the HPRA here in Ireland or the FDA in the United States. The agenda is as shown. I'll start with context and highlight our understanding of sustainability. I'll go through Hovione's approach. We'll talk a bit more specifically about carbon footprint and the circular economy and the actions we have taken. The context to our sustainability journey is the clear expression from our board that we become a leader in sustainability. However, I think it is useful to note that there are other business drivers. On the regulatory front, we have the European Union's EU Green Deal, which is the European Union's main new growth strategy, with an overarching objective that the EU become the first climate neutral continent by 2050. In Ireland, we have just issued our first carbon budget, which sets a net zero target for the Irish economy for 2050, with a cut of 51% by 2030 against the 2018 baseline. COP26 has just finished with all the intended publicity. And some of you may be aware that in late May, a court in the Netherlands issued a ruling to Shell that it must cut its carbon emissions by 45% by 2030 against the 2019 baseline. This ruling has been appealed or is being appealed, but I think it does give you a sense of what is happening. Outside of the regulatory environment, we have increasing levels of engagement with clients, driven no doubt by the climate crisis and increasing levels of consumer activism. In understanding sustainability, there are many definitions out there, but the common understanding for business is that sustainability is about creating long-term value, having consideration to economic, social, and environmental concerns. At a high level, it's about stakeholders rather than shareholders. And this is another definition that has a lot of text, but I think the key messages are important. Sustainability is a continuous process that reduces negative impacts and increases benefits while maintaining profitability. Getting that balance right is important. For profit, purpose, and survival is a tagline often used in sustainability, and the need to survive cannot be forgotten. Hovione's approach to sustainability is quite simple. Figure out where we are, decide where we want to be, identify targets to get us there, and execute. The typical plan, do, check, act. You're probably saying, this is common sense, and you'd be correct. There is no rocket science. The starting point for us was knowing where we were. I'll talk to the sustainability models that we use later. As a company, we are B Corp certified for sustainability, and we also have the Irish Business in the Community mark. We used data from these assessments plus various KPIs to determine where we were on our sustainability journey. Objective data was not always available. Where we didn't have data to set specific targets, we agreed on high-level objectives and looked to see how we could begin to establish data points around these objectives. Our mantra from the outset was not to let perfection be the enemy of good, and that any progress would be beneficial. Once we had an idea where we wanted to focus our energies, example in carbon footprint, we set our targets, identified opportunities, and executed. Again, priorities were determined with consideration to cost, complexity, duration, and the need for quick wins, with a focus on what we could do and not what we couldn't. Sustainability is a journey, a continuous process, as referenced on one of the previous slides. Sustainability maturity models reflect the steps along that journey. Some models have 6 steps, some have 4, but this 5-step model is the model that we think best suits Hovione. In the beginning, activities are entirely driven through market forces, the need to comply with regulations, the need to meet customer demand. While in latter stages, the company is internally driven to create sustainable change. To move us up the sustainability model, we have a broad-based program of improvements. However, climate change is a key area of focus, and in that context, targeting our carbon footprint is a priority. Our carbon footprint is impacted by many areas of the business, from energy, waste, the circular economy, resource consumption, supply chain, etc. And setting targets around our carbon footprint gives a wide segment of the business an opportunity to contribute. If I look at the Hovione data over the last 3 years, we have an approximate 20% reduction in carbon footprint. This decrease has occurred while the business was growing. And the business continues to grow, which is obviously good, but this poses a significant challenge for us in terms of carbon footprint going forward. If you think of the 51% reduction required for the Irish economy in absolute terms, then what we have done in the past won't suffice for the future. Most of the improvements to date have been energy related. I would say that we have captured a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and we will need something more transformational for the future. And we are looking at what that might be. It will require a culture change to make sustainability a central focus on everything we do. It means that we will have to assign an economic value to sustainability, probably initially using the cost of carbon, but in time involving a more sophisticated cost-benefit accounting system. The circular economy has played a limited role to date, but going forward, it will need to play a much bigger part. The idea of reusing solvents, for example, back into the process using solvents, for example, back into our process is something we are looking at. If we could recover and reuse solvents on site, we could save carbon footprint in terms of resources as well as transport. However, there is a large cost involved in terms of capability. There is also a regulatory dimension that is never quick. We could potentially toll recover off-site for reuse on-site, but security of the supply chain would then be key. We obviously could also recover for use off-site, but this would mean sourcing markets adaptable to the batch manufacturing nature of our process. I guess what I'm really saying is that the circular economy is complex. For us, it is about processing, marketing, regulations, etc. To embed this in a business requires alignment internally and externally and takes time. If I look to the future, we have the objective to align with the government targets of 51%. And to achieve that, we are looking at targets of a 7% annual reduction. There is no doubt this won't be easy. It will involve considerable investment in CapEx and headcount. It will require significant innovation in how we design processes, develop new facilities, and fundamentally, it will require a culture change to embed sustainability in the fabric of the business. Thank you.
Next up, we have Brian Cloonan from Dawn Meats also joining virtually, and then we'll switch to some live presentations and a moderated panel with Maurice. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. Dawn Meats is a privately owned food production business based in Waterford, Ireland. It produces a range of food products for direct supply to consumers, retail outlets, and ingredient manufacturers. The supply of safe food for an ever-increasing world population is one of the major challenges facing our modern world. Our current population is 7.9 billion. 2 million years at 1 billion, and over a period of 200 years it reached 7 billion. The UN predicts a population of 9.5 billion by 2050. Where do we get the food to feed 9.5 billion people? That's the major challenge that faces us all in the current century. Commitment given at the Rio Convention in 1992 by world leaders was that human beings are at the center of concern for sustainable development. They are entitled to a healthy and productive life in harmony with nature. This challenge creates an opportunity that can be delivered by properly utilizing the available resources on the planet. The resources we have are energy, water, and food. These resources can be utilized in a better manner by utilizing improved production efficiencies, less inputs for better quality outputs, the adoption of science and technology with education, and the reduction and elimination of waste. Currently, 1/3 of all food is wasted between farm and consumption. Dawn Meats Group, as a major player in the production of food, is playing its part by adopting a new approach on the utilisation of resources. Dawn Meats processes 3 million cattle and 1 million sheep annually into ready-to-go meals and a range of other food products. The work is carried out from 22 strategically located facilities, utilising the skills of its 7,500 strong workforce. It supplies over 50 markets worldwide and exports 40% of its produce. Dawn Meat's goal is to become Europe's first fully sustainable food company, and there are 5 strategic pillars that underpin the achievement of this target: resource management, food safety and health, animal nutrition and welfare, sustainable sourcing of product, and the people and community into which and from which the product is produced. We have carried out an independent sustainable report which demonstrates our achievements. We've saved and reduced 240,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide since our standards began in 2016. We've saved enough energy to power 20,215 homes. 100% of our electricity is sourced from renewable sources. We've donated 125,000 meals to frontline workers. And we've invested 1 million annually in on-farm sustainable projects. Dawn Meats contributes 1.6 billion annually to rural communities in the form of payment for livestock. Our commitments in achieving a more sustainable environment: to reduce our water consumption by 40% based on 2006 figures, to reduce our energy intensity by 40% based on the same year's figures. We plan to have zero waste to landfill, and in 2021, we've agreed to reduce Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 59% by the year 2030. We are committed to sustainable food supply. Albert Einstein's philosophy of the early 1900s is very relevant today. It forms the basic building block for the creation of circular manufacturing. The ultimate aim is to eliminate waste at all levels in production by utilising this resource within the facilities. Circular manufacturing will be key to the achievement of more sustainable production systems whereby nature, industry, and consumer work in harmony together. Dawn Meats joined CircUléire to use the collaborative force of like-minded businesses in the delivery of more sustainable future for everyone. Dawn Meats joined CircUléire to help and participate in the structuring of a framework for circular manufacturing. It is hoped that this model will guide and influence others in adopting a circular approach to their business. We need to create proactive thinking in the better utilization of resources from linear to circular and thereby reduce wastage. We're all aware of the commitments given at the recent conference on global warming, and that is the challenge that we all face together. Dawn Meats are currently working as lead partner on a project funded by CircUléire that will transform waste into sustainable energy and displace the use of fossil fuels. This project, codenamed Success, stands for the sustainable use of carbon contributes to environmental sustainable systems. The Success project will demonstrate better and more constructive utilization of waste. involve technology innovation with BHSL, and explore further possibilities utilising 21st century technologies and advances with University of Limerick. The aim is to deliver a green, circular and sustainable solution that will become a European first. Our goal is to develop a green, sustainable energy solution using byproducts from the food business to deliver the energy demands of the core business. Through this process, further trace element recovery will also be possible. Thanks to everyone for your time.
Thank you very much, Brian and Austin. I think, you know, hearing from the CircULÉIRE members talk about their journey and some of the challenges, it gives you a sense of that pioneering spirit that they're on. You know, you heard people saying they're doing it because they believe it's the right thing. You know, in some companies' cases, there's costs associated with investment to try and improve their overall environmental footprint, but, you know, they're driving that forward because it may have a short-term adverse impact on profitability, but it's the right thing to do in the long term. And you know, we're delighted to work with those companies. They were excellent. I'd like to introduce Elizabeth O'Reilly, who's the head of environmental compliance and membership in WEEE Ireland. We saw Elizabeth earlier, just giving a brief commentary on CircULÉIRE, but we're delighted to have her here live, and I'm going to hand over to Elizabeth now to talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. I think just before it starts, we have a brief introductory video, just a bit about ourselves and WEEE Ireland and just framing where we are. And then I'd like to talk a bit more about the challenge that we're working on under the Global E-Waste Challenge, and then our circular journey, which we're so delighted to be a part of the CircULÉIRE network in helping us on that road. Thanks.
Electrical appliances and technology are woven into the fabric of our lives. From fridge freezers and washing machines to smaller items like cables and watches. The list is extensive, and so is consumption. On average, 12 household electrical products were sold for every person in Ireland last year. We don't want e-waste going to landfills, being illegally dumped or exported, where it creates environmental issues elsewhere. Ensuring this doesn't happen tomorrow starts with managing these products today. We are WEEE Ireland, an industry-funded, not-for-profit EPR scheme that operates authorised take-back and recycling programmes across Ireland. We ensure that waste, electrical and electronic equipment, batteries and lighting are handled safely, securely and sustainably. Our systems divert over 18 million appliances and devices from landfills each year. That's equivalent to more than 1,000 humpback whales. Here's how it works. E-waste is dropped off at our authorised collection sites and then processed by certified Irish recyclers and downstream partners. Modern technologies break down end-of-life appliances and harvest their raw materials. Hazardous substances are responsibly handled to protect the environment and workers' health and safety. New products can be manufactured using recovered materials, creating a sustainable and circular economy. By bringing e-waste to us, you keep it from landfills, being illegally dumped or handled by unauthorised operators. And you help recycle resources, contributing to a more resource-efficient future. Since 2005, we've worked for our industry members, developing a successful, accessible WEEE system that's been made possible through the recycling efforts of the Irish public and collaboration with key stakeholders.
Thank you. So I think a lot of what I'm going to talk and present about now really follows on from that theme in collaboration. The challenge that we have in dealing with the global e-waste, what's generated, it's immense. There's over 56 million tonnes last year being generated globally, and it's set to hit well over 70 million tonnes by 2030. There's no tipping point, there's no end in sight. There's no doubt that technology and digitalisation is going to help us and is helping us adapt, become more climate resilient, and obviously the mitigation that we all absolutely need to work on. But the legacy and what it leaves behind when we're finished is so important. And you saw a little bit in the introduction there about what we're trying to do to deal with that. But we have a lot more to do. There's a lot of equipment, redundant equipment still there, still sitting at home in your house, in the kitchen drawer, in under the stairs and in the garden shed, or sitting the leads behind the television. We know that there's a lot of redundant technology, and what we're actively trying to do is encourage people to think what they need to do with that e-waste. Please don't put it in the bin, and obviously please recycle. And the why, the resource efficiency, what's contained in those devices, the urban mind that's there, and what we can access for use again in manufacturing is so important. Extended producer responsibility means that we, Ireland, and the 1,300 producers in Ireland, that's manufacturers, importers and distributors throughout the supply chain, we have a lead role to play. There's no doubt EPR is a key part of the circular economy regulations here in Ireland, and obviously in the wider European framework. But we can't do it alone. There's a whole host of actors throughout the supply chain, throughout the value chain, towards the end use that we have to work together. And collaboration from the Irish perspective on WEEE and battery management has been fantastic. The Department of Environment, Climate and Communications have set up platforms. We have an active WEEE and battery monitoring group. We work in the National Waste Advisory Group, and we have our input. And we're able to input on behalf of our members and the stakeholders that we work for to ensure that we're driving solutions that work for industry as well. We're also part of a European collaboration. This is just one of the bodies we work with. The WEEE Forum is over 40 organisations, both in Europe and now globally. We're across the world. And we share it. We're a best-in-class, a centre of excellence for management of waste electrical equipment. We're able to work on projects together. We're able to collaborate and put our cumulative experience. When we started in 2005, we were able to talk to our colleagues in the WEEE Forum about what they were doing, what was happening in Norway, the best practice that had been achieved in the Netherlands. And since then, we've been able to share that. We've been lucky enough to talk to colleagues in South Africa. We've been able to work with colleagues in Eastern Europe as they're developing their new systems and share our experiences. So again, the positive power of collaborating and working together. In Ireland, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without our partners who manage that downstream activity for us once we take back that electrical waste from the Irish public. K&K Metals Recycling, we referenced earlier today, they're a family-owned Indigenous recycling company. They've well over 40 years' experience in the metals and take-back programme. But they're also certified to the EN 50625 standard, which is it is the highest standard you can achieve in e-waste recycling. And it's actually mandatory in Ireland. We're one of the few countries that have implemented that standard here. Irish Lamps Recycling, similarly, down in Athy. The Midlands are a hotbed of recycling activity for us in e-waste resource recovery. And then we work with a network of logistics, reverse logistics, social enterprise partners with CircULEIRE and another CircULEIRE member, WiseTech, on pilot programs. So again, there's quite a lot of employment, I think it is a really important point to make as well, in this recycling and recovery take-back program that we're all a part of. And we couldn't do it if people weren't engaging with our programs. And since 2005, the Irish public have been fantastic. They've shown it again and again in so many environmental initiatives. At the moment, this is just a flavour of some of the consumer campaigns we have, and I hope you're seeing these in social media and elsewhere. We're asking everyone to follow your lead and look for that redundant technology. If it's old and broken, if it can't be regifted and reused, if you can't repair it, then please don't leave it sitting doing nothing. Please put it back into the system, into the authorised collection system, and let us recycle it for you. Do not put it in the bin. That's our binning and sinning campaign that we're really reminding, particularly with batteries. They're very small, but it's easy to put them in a blue box and recycle. And what we can do through the Dream of Change campaign is informing people of the why, what we can do again with those resources when they're made available again.
Our always-on campaigns about free recycling take-back and free battery recycling remind people that we have a network of retailers across Ireland, that you don't just have to go to buy appliances and devices. I know that's their bread and butter, but they're actively there, acting on their compliance obligations and even going beyond compliance. You can take back on a like-for-like basis when you buy in Ireland a new appliance or device. But if you work with the We'll Take It Back core electrical retailers, and you'll see them advertising and promoting on the radio what they do, they will take back without any purchase necessary. And if you've saved up, if you can't repair anymore and you are availing of a Black Friday offer, then make sure when they're delivering to you that they're taking back on delivery. All of those solutions are here in Ireland, and actually we're the envy of so many of our European counterparts that we have that mandatory take-back framework and we have that cooperation from the supply chain. Because we're a government-approved scheme, so we're not-for-profit, we're owned by our members, and we work on behalf of all of that membership industry body, but we're approved by the Minister for Environment, and therefore we have a very detailed required reporting, an audited process, and that's right, that's what it should be. It's transparent, it's all on our website, and we have key performance indicators that we have to meet. Currently, the legal framework still focuses on collection rate. So that's compared to what was placed on the market, how well did we do in taking back and collecting for recycling. And we want to be in Ireland at the 65% rate. So that's compared to what would have gone on the market on average over the last 3 years. And we've been very close to that in recent times. However, we're starting to slip a bit. And that's really because of that rate of consumption that is increasing. It's also because products that are going on the market now are lasting longer. The PV panels that you might be putting on your house are not going to come back into the recycling stream for 10, 20, even 30 years. The longer lasting appliances do mean that those targets are harder to meet. But small equipment, unfortunately, is still going into the bin. So we've a lot of different campaigns that we need to continue to work on. And again, I mentioned this earlier, we actually take back more from the retail sector in Ireland than we do anywhere else. And I think that just shows the value of having, the entire supply chain connected and involved. But also, that's where people go to when they want to find information out about what is the most energy efficient washing machine that I can buy. What does the water consumption look like? Do you have a recycling and take back solution for me? It is becoming part of that sustainability discussion. So last year, we collected more than 38,000 tonnes of e-waste for recycling. And yes, the recycling rates and collection rates are becoming more challenging, but that is still more than we've done in any other year to date since we started in 2005, and that's despite the restrictions on COVID. And it's not just about collecting and counting those numbers coming in. As I said, our partners who are certified to the highest standards you can achieve for e-waste recycling have to work across so many different processes to recover those materials, to manage the hazardous waste requirements, and we have to report under the WEEE directive on very specific target achievements to make sure it's a quality system. On average, well over 80% of the material in all of that e-waste that we collect can be used again in manufacturing once it's gone through our recovery processes. It actually goes to over 90% when you count the energy recovery as well. So we're constantly trying to improve that year on year. The same with batteries. You cannot just collect them, put them all in a big box and put them through a recycling process. There's so many different chemistries involved. But what's in those batteries and what we can recover and use again is going to become so much more important, particularly with the demand on batteries to power our vehicles, for our energy storage solutions going forward. An environmental footprint, measuring what we do and the impact that recycling and recovery has on the environment when we compare that to our diversion from landfill. And this is a key part of, again, of our membership of CircUléire. We have to demonstrate as a member what we're doing in terms of that carbon emission reduction. We're lucky, again, through the WEEE Forum, we're able to work on a methodology, a standardised methodology that we look at across all of the schemes in Europe and measuring what that impact is compared to if it went to landfill, if it went to an unauthorised treatment facility, if it wasn't recycled properly. And again, showing the value of the raw materials, replacing those raw materials that we can recover back out again. So our compliance register, looks better than that, and my colleague Elise is in the audience maintains it, so it looks far better than that, but it just gives a snapshot of some of the regulatory frameworks that we're working under. And I think anybody here who's working in a compliance role and maintaining a register will have pages and pages of this. We've talked a lot, I think, about and showed in our video about what we've done since 2005. But we're looking to the future now, and we're looking at what's happening with those circular economy regulations and our transition to becoming not just an EPR scheme for recycling, which is really what we were when we started in 2005, but a circular economy scheme. And working at the moment a lot on the battery regulations, where we're required to engage and make submissions on behalf of our members and how we can bring about solutions for achieving that better life cycle management of batteries. But there's going to be a revision of the WEEE directive in 2 to 3 years, and it'll take that amount of time for us to engage with the European Commission and their consultants and their impact assessment. And I think that's one of the things I really love working in compliance and working for WEEE Ireland have. We have a say, we have a voice, we can submit, we make submissions to the Department of Environment, we make submissions to the Commission, and we tell them what works for Irish industry, and they get a chance to talk to us and we share that. And I see that collaboration effort very similar within CircULEIRE and being able to share and drive and build momentum and scale. So some of just the policy drivers we support is working under those regulatory frameworks and that kind of submission activity. WEEE flows, not just counting what goes in the market and comes back for recycling. What's being repaired? What's being reused? We've heard from so many of the members of CircULEIRE already about the innovation they're doing in their networks. I'm trying to get under the hood of so many of our members, all of the names, all of the brands that you're phoning and typing on today that have set up all the equipment there. They have fantastic asset management and return and refurbishment programs, and trying to gather that data and see what it means in an Irish context is something we're really actively involved in at the moment, and again being supported by the team in IMR and CircULEIRE on. Again, countering free riders. If the Irish industry is being compliant and putting all of this investment and time and effort into building sustainable take-back frameworks, we have to make sure everybody is doing the same. And again, that's something we ask when you buy, to think first. Are they giving take-back solutions? Are they registered? The same with procurement, whether it's in your home or your office, looking at what that company is offering and who they're registered with. So this has been referenced a few times today already, but this at the moment is the policy document that we're all actively engaged in. The 200 actions in that waste policy document. I don't envy the department in trying to get the rollout in all of those programs simultaneously, and we're really looking forward to the publication of the Circular Economy Bill. But there's a very clear mandate in there for us. New rules for EPR schemes to incentivise good practice in waste recycling and drive better product design, and that goes throughout the whole kind of universe of rethinking and reducing and reusing and repairing. So we knew when we started our membership with CircULEIRE that we have a journey to go on in order to go from that sort of recycling to circular organisation. And we also knew we don't have all of the expertise in-house, even with all of our fantastic collaboration networks. So we separately commissioned and asked the IMR CircULEIRE team to work with us on strategy development, to work with our boards of directors. They all represent the industry in Ireland. They're from the lighting sector, from the White Goods Association and technology, and to really put our heads together on what we could do and what role we could play. And we looked at some of the other visions for circular electronics that are out there, and there's some fantastic pathways being built individually by companies and by clusters on how we can drive better design, how we can increase the official collection rate, how we can scale up secondary material markets. And so as a result of that, we launched in October this year at our own members event our own vision, our circular ambition strategy, to lead the electrical and battery industry in a more circular economical model, working under those frameworks we've referenced, and transforming our already successful WEEE and waste battery take-back system into an even more sustainable one, benefiting the environment, business and society, but embedding a circular ethos across the value chain. And this is how we're going to do that, and we'll be publishing the more detailed roadmap next year once we get those even more detailed mandates coming out of the strategy publications this year. But we're doing recycling and recovery well. We're working upwards, and we're going to talk about some of the programs we're doing, but there's an extended OR network that we need to go through, and we need to have programs in place for all of these and capitalise on all of the work that our members are doing in these areas. So I'm going to just focus a little bit on repair. I was actually focusing originally about 2 years ago on reuse and how can I drive more reuse in Ireland and how can we bring about a system where this is natural and culturally acceptable. And one of the things the industry kept saying to me is, well, you can't reuse without repair technicians, and we don't have any in Ireland. You know, they're all competing. They're all trying to poach the one off the other. There's a fantastic network of, I'd like to say repair men and women, but it is predominantly repair men, and not being ageist in any way. But the average age of the repair technicians in the white goods sector is 59. And I'm sure those men want to look forward to a retirement in the next few years and not be carrying on for another 30. We don't have another generation of white good repair technicians coming up. So we partnered with the Repair My Stuff programme with the EPA and the local authority to just try and bring more people involved in the repair sector onto their listing. And it became really clear to me that there just wasn't enough of them. So when we looked with CircULEIRE's Innovation Fund, and when we were looking at ideas and we spoke to the industry, we were originally looking at a reuse programme, and they said to us, no, we want to do something on repair. How can you free up that bottleneck? How can we create an innovative project to do that? So that led to a project that we're 6 months into now, the Circular Economy Skills Initiative, which is a white goods field service training pathway in association with our partners, project partners, White Goods Association, Fast Track into Technology, and of course CircULEIRE and the strategic partners. And after 6 months, and again, we're still dealing with a year of restrictions and challenges on meetings and that, we're delighted that 16 technicians started in our new facility in Dunshaughlin, Fitt's new facility, started on a learning pathway. Yes, they're learning about repair programs, they're learning about new technologies and how to prolong the life of their appliances, but they're also learning about that importance of doing that within a sustainable and a circular economy framework. All of the industry has committed to their time, not just on steering committees, but into the curriculum and the training programme as well. They've provided all the equipment for the workshops for the engineers to work on, and they've agreed for an industry placement. So over the next months, there will be a lot of classroom and workshop training, and then they will be going into industry placement, sponsored by the industry in Ireland. For the first time, this is happening. So just a shot, I think, of the application programme, and there's so much interest in this from the educational training boards, and how could we mimic and roll this out across other sectors and really upskill people for a more circular economy. This is just a flavour of, I think, the people involved. Our steering committee have been fantastic, and they meet on a regular basis, and my colleague Beryl Gilmore, who's the project manager, has done a brilliant job of bringing everybody together and engaging. And what it's also given us an opportunity is to talk about circular economy and opportunities and challenges, you know, in the framework of a solution. And I think that's what's so important, and that's what I wanted to demonstrate today. If I go back a few slides, which I won't, about the regulatory framework, it can be really off-putting to somebody in industry who has to get on with the day job. But if we can bring it about through a solution that works for their industry, then everybody's going to come along with us. So we have 3 more educational training boards interested in rolling this out. So hopefully, if I'm here speaking this time next year, I'll be talking about the results of the project, and also that we have repair training technicians for the white goods sector and interest in other sectors as well by this time. And I have to thank the industry as well. I know there's a huge focus on the challenges, and I spoke a lot about the e-waste legacy at the start, but we couldn't do it together without their collaboration. And again, the connection and the networking and the CircULEIRE team and the expertise they've given us as well. Our membership has really, really helped us on our transformation journey. And again, next year I hope I'll be able to talk a little bit more about how we've come on again over the next 12 months. And this is just one of the projects we're working on. So I'm going to finish up with a thank you. I know why I'm doing it for. That's part of my future. And Bosco is our recycling ambassador for our Laura Lynn supporting project. So if you put batteries into the blue boxes that you see in all of the shops around, any of the small WEEE technology that you're getting rid of, that's old and broken, can't be fixed and can't be repaired, we make donations and contributions to the Laura Lynn Children's Hospice charity. And I think it's an important point of saying we're all about the environment, definitely sustainability mandate, but can we do some social good as well? And I'll leave you on that thank you note. Thanks.
Elizabeth, thank you very much for that. That was We really appreciate working closely with Elizabeth and her team in CircUléire. There's a huge convergence in terms of what we're trying to do, and they do excellent work, so thank you very much for that. I'd like to introduce Paul McSweeney, who's the CEO of the ZeroNet, and Paul is going to talk through some innovation associated with how do you enable the circular economy and how can you create a new business opportunity to, I suppose, take advantage of the drive towards circular economy in general. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks very much, Maurice. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? I'm going to start with a bit of a quote and then maybe challenge the quote. One of the most serious challenges of operating a circular economy is reverse logistics, a major component of how the circular economy functions. This was a quote from a pretty groundbreaking report on how reverse logistics could be applied by the postal sector from a bunch of Harvard guys published by Thunderbird International Business Review a couple of years ago. But I'm going to challenge it by saying that I don't think it quite hits the mark, because I think the current interpretation of what we understand to be reverse logistics is probably somewhat wide of the mark when it comes to the need to create what we call circular logistics, which is a little bit different. So it's maybe 80% true. So I'm going to just talk a reminder, but Elizabeth did it far more eloquently than I did in terms of what the problem is. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? I'm going to take you through a little bit about the platform, small introduction, why did we create it, what that journey was like over the last 10 years, because it has been quite some time. What's different about it? What does it do that the traditional waste or third-party logistics sector currently doesn't do? What's our unique value proposition? Proper demonstration of the platform from app through to collection, and the complete user experience for how you administer the optimized collection of not just e-waste, but this particular project that we're going to talk about is around e-waste. We've been involved in a project in the UK, in the city of Brighton, I should say Brighton and Hove. Anybody who comes from there gets extremely annoyed if you forget Hove, where we've been live and potentially available to over 120,000 homes. And then a brief mention of a possible Irish pilot project in Cork in 2022 that could have some interesting ramifications for CircUléire members and others. So what is the problem? Well, as Elizabeth said, there's tons and tons of e-waste. It's the single biggest, fastest growing, most toxic waste stream on the planet. 50 million tons a couple of years back, scheduled to reach some 120 million tons by 2050. Only 20% globally is formally recycled. It's as the UN described, it's a tsunami of e-waste. And not just to completely focus on, indeed on e-waste, but textiles, which is another stream that we're looking at very strongly. And a very interesting statistic that floats around is that there's some 30 billion pounds of unworn garments in UK wardrobes, which is a sobering statistic. So just a little bit about what the platform is. It's the world's, we think, first cloud-based technology platform explicitly designed around the collection or reverse logistical requirements of the circular economy. It consists of a user app, an operational portal in the middle, and then that links with a highly functional driver app, because the whole collection paradigm is absolutely critical if you want to achieve circular logistics, and particularly for e-waste. We've been doing this for a long, long time. Started off creating the original company, Zerobin Group, in 2011. In 2012, we were lucky to have become one of the founder members of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation CE100, which is pretty much still the go-to think tank when it comes to circular innovation and promotion. We had wide exposure to a large group of brands, all of whom have been engaged with circularity for a long, long time, all of these brands that you see here. We had a go at doing a pilot, not entirely successful, with some very supportive individuals in BT, British Telecom, which was all about remanufacturing of home hubs. They reckoned there was an enormous opportunity there, but it was a little bit too early, but we did learn an awful lot. We were then very lucky to have met up with Zero Waste Scotland. Scotland is an extraordinary country when it comes to circular deployment. Scotland has been doing this for a long time. They have a government agency dedicated to this. We got funding from Zero Waste Scotland, which was European funding that allowed us to build our 1.5 version, and we deployed a pilot of that in Stirling in Scotland in 2019. The plan had been to deploy a more sophisticated version of that pilot 2.0, but then the world changed last year, as we all know. We ended up instead going down to Brighton, which was a long way from Scotland, as they pointed out to us. So we've been live with our first large-scale urban pilot platform available to 120,000 homes in collaboration with the local IT specialist or reprocessing specialist, Material Focus, which is an EPR scheme in the UK, and also in collaboration with Brighton and Hove City Council. This year we were very lucky to have been made members, and we're very grateful for that, of CircULÉIRE, which has been a fantastic experience for us. In addition to being made a member, we were also awarded a critical project, Circular Economy Project of the Year, by a prestigious organization, Business Green Leaders Award 2021. And the other thing that happened over the last year is that we're about to deploy our technology in Australia in collaboration with the largest e-waste reprocessing company, Cypher, down there, and in addition, another company called SCR Group, who are the largest textile recyclers in Australia. So we're looking to explore the idea of co-collection of e-waste and textiles, which we think could be quite transformative in terms of the cost of that logistical opportunity. We've had lots and lots of endorsements over the last 10 years. They speak for themselves. So what is it that's different about this? What makes the ZeroNet platform different to anything else? And there's a particular piece of this jigsaw puzzle that we're very keen on. Obviously, so I'll start with the question. What is it that motivates people to do the right thing, particularly in terms of waste? And everybody is aware of what's happening all around us. We've all been following COP26, exhausted by COP26 and what it means. But the sobering reality in terms of what really motivates people in the experience of many is convenience. And we think that this is the single biggest USP that will drive the deployment of the ZeroNet. Going back to the report that I mentioned at the top of the presentation, so convenience is key, but why? And this was an example from that report of a toner cartridge, a multi-brand toner cartridge program, which was deployed in Japan a number of years ago. And all of these brands were involved. Japan Post was involved. And in spite of the fact that some 3,600 post offices were used for the take-back of toner cartridges, the recovery rate was only 10%. And even in the UK, similar figures with the similar projects are not yielding anything more than 15% take-back. And this is also echoed by conversations that we had with senior product stewardship people within HP during our Ellen MacArthur Foundation days, where they said they have the technology to recover 99% of the highly complex materials that are contained, and in many cases rare, the critical raw materials that are contained within toner cartridges, but the technology doesn't exist for appropriate logistics that consumers themselves can actually relate to. So it's quite sobering. So how do you fix that? Well, so this is what our platform is all about. It's a geospatial database dedicated to creating real-time household, with emphasis on household, availability of many, many different categories of post-consumer products and materials. This is in fact a live snapshot of our database from July of this year, showing collection points which are individual household collection points across the city of Brighton and Hove, 148 of those in particular. There are 5 key stakeholder groups or so, from householders to third-party logistics, local authorities, major brands and reprocessors. And then just to cap it all, we've had conversations with NHS Scotland and the London Ambulance Service, with whom we were planning an active pilot, but that got kiboshed at the beginning of last year for obvious reasons, but we'll come back to it again. So this is a tale of two halves, kind of a slide of two halves. I mentioned that reverse logistics as a phrase doesn't really cut it when you try to really figure out what are the elements, what are the components of a circular economy logistics system, or of a circular logistics system. And we think that these, let's call them modalities, from smart collection, branded take-back, closed-loop supply chain, and we'll be touching on some of those when we move into the demonstration phase. Loop Ready, anybody who knows about the Loop initiative, which is the world's first fast-moving consumer goods initiative as a service, which is phenomenal. In fact, the creator of that, Tom Zaki, is going to be talking to, I think, you, Geraldine, in a couple of weeks' time. You really need to see this guy. He's incredibly inspirational. But that is the game changer, that Loop project. So DRS Ready, deposit refund return schemes at the doorstep, circular models, Supporting remanufacturing, reuse, and data-bearing equipment are critical elements of a circular logistics landscape as well. So over here, you've got all of these organizations, some of whom have some really interesting characteristics. To do all of this, you need all of these guys using something that they have in massive abundance, which is backhaul. Anybody who does forward logistics, be it National Postal Service, the United States Postal Service, biggest logistics company in the world by volume in terms of a logistical space, does 140 million US address points that they are obliged to visit every day by federal mandate, and they do almost nothing with that collection space. So they have an empty van opportunity. And interestingly, the very first people that we spoke to when we came up with this idea were the Royal Mail. And from the very first meeting with the Royal Mail, which is nearly 10 years ago, here's what they said. They said that they go to 27 million homes every day and they do nothing with their backhaul. And very interestingly, from an economic perspective, they also then said that if they were able to monetize that backhaul space, that it could potentially double their profitability. And the reason for that is that reverse logistics is almost free if you are already in situ. So when you go to an address location and you can monetize the collection event, you have virtually paid for it already. So this is an asset that we want to be able to exploit as we go forward. So I'm going to bring you through the platform itself. I mentioned there's a user app currently available on both platforms. I'm not going to go into all of that. An operational layer. And then we're very lucky to partner with Irish organization Geopal through our wonderful partners Allsop over here who are present today. And between all of these four pieces, essentially, these are the pieces that allow the ZeroNet to work. So I'm going to take you through briefly what the user app looks like. We used to do live demonstrations, and they were horrible because something used to always go wrong. So everything is now being pasted into PowerPoint, which generally doesn't go wrong. This is what the experience is for any user using the app. New collections, you can manage current collections, you count details, how it works via video, and then there's various partner links depending on how the interface is put together. So let's go through a new collection then. All of the categories that you see here, all of the little information buttons, the icons, the text, these are all soft and user definable, and they can be linked to a geographical area. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through an actual simulated collection, selecting 3 items. This is basically shopping in reverse, I guess. Very important with Apple products, by the way, because if you don't get people to disconnect their iCloud accounts, then the device recovered cannot be reused and is effectively bricked, which is no good for anybody. Maybe there. And then there's availability preferences in terms of the driver and collection experience, and a message to the driver which filters through to the driver app. And then once that's done, the collection has been registered. Simple. From an operations point of view then, just a little bit of a prelude. The system has been designed to be aware of wards, and wards are the smallest, if you like, district within which the platform can be deployed. And initially, just from a UK perspective, the ZeroNet platform is live currently across the 21 wards representing Brighton and Hove City Council. Additionally, there are many different kinds of messages that can be deployed within the platform to alert people to when collections are taking place. And then finally, there's a layer at the back that allows you to configure the app to be, in a sense, linked within or linked to an individual ward. It also applies here in Ireland, but it also applies in Australia. This was just a demonstration we did, the joys of Zoom, presenting in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago. And these are just some of the examples of the different streams that we're looking at collecting. Tennis ball collection, which is a big thing in the state of Victoria. And then Nike have they call it Reuse a Shoe program, where again, if you can optimize the collection experience at the doorstep, you can really be transformative. So this is what the system looks like live. The address and customer data has been blanked out, but this is live collection request data from our Brighton trial. This is the live map showing that whenever this was done, I think sometime in March, there were 386 collections. Up at the top, 133 homes representing 386 items. We have the ward structure up here, so if we select a ward, we can filter it down to 15, And this is essential then for planning, for service creation, and for optimized logistics. The other thing that we can do, and this is the thing that tends to get brands themselves quite excited, is we can do product filtering and brand filtering. If you can recover, this is just a representation of iPhones, so this was what all of the available iPhones on a map ready to be collected. So anybody who has anything that they want to recover at brand level for optimized post-consumer second life possibilities, we think that this offers enormous opportunities, whether it's contact lenses or packaging or any branded product. We've had engagement with Nespresso. We're talking to them tomorrow about coffee pod take-back, which is a huge problem for them. And you consider those little pods contain, you know, high quality aluminium and high quality, well, effectively coffee grounds, which can be used if recovered properly. But again, the rates of recovery for those pods across all brands is microscopic. It represents staggering waste. I've mentioned that we can use the system for medical waste recovery, which is what we're looking at, food waste, textiles, circular economy business models, and the servitization, be it loop. We've looked at light servitization, ink servitization, and so the possibilities are endless. Right now, it's very much the focus around here, but the system is operative every day in Brighton. So when it comes to offering, managing the collection, this is probably one of the most sophisticated parts of the system. And in essence, we make offers to people to do collections, which are then reflected in the app on their side. They can accept, reject, or ignore, and we'll be around again. And this is working very well. And this is essentially our product. This is an actual optimized collection route in Brighton, which is one of the products, one of the outcomes from our platform. This then links to a driver experience. Now, there's an awful lot to the driver experience, and the reason why it's so important is because if you want to recover the maximum from any product, post-consumer, you need to be able to capture it separately, whether it's a laptop, whether it's a toaster. If you want reuse or if you want high-quality recycling, it's really important to be able to track it. And the driver app from Geopal is perfectly adapted to that. Tagging RFID or barcodes or QR codes is all possible within this. Signatures, and it's also heavily integrated then back into the user app so that as the driver is approaching, you get notifications at different intervals. And then once it's done, you get a receipt on the app to confirm that the collection has taken place. So over the last year, I mentioned that we've been involved in a project that we call Revalue Electricals, which is based in Brighton, in collaboration with IT asset management company, locally based in Brighton and Hove, Tech Takeback, the City Council, and the Recycle Your Electricals program run by British-based Material Focus Producer Responsibility Scheme. And this is a project to recover small electricals and data-bearing items, and it's produced some extraordinary results. I think one of the most heartening things that it has managed to do, not just from an environmental perspective, but there's a very strong social dimension as well, and that the project has been used to drive optimized recovery of laptops, which, because of the homeschooling challenges in the UK and here and everywhere, there's been a huge digital divide. So it's made a big contribution, and all of these projects here were recovered in Brighton and reused. And I think this is enough. This is an 8-year-old child who sent in this note to say, thank you. He said, I've been through a lot of trouble to try and do my home learning, and this means a lot. So what else do you need? Some facts and figures. 2,000 household collections, about 27,000 electrical items were recovered, 5,400 of which, so more than 20%, have been redistributed. There's also an element of disassembly taking place. That's really for experimentation to see if components can be extracted during the collection, during the disassembly piece, and approximately 35% reuse rate for data-bearing equipment, which we think is massive and offers huge potential. If the 20% figure here, direct reuse for non-IT, was applied throughout the rest of the UK, it would actually equate to about 100 million items of e-waste that were reused, which is higher up the waste hierarchy, of course, than recycling. The key learnings, I think, Convenience and data wipe are the two biggies from a householder perspective. If you trust a service is going to destroy the data on your 5-10-year-old Dell laptop that you haven't used for years, that you'd happily give up, then having it collected and having the data destroyed and receiving a certificate of data destruction, they are the key considerations to uptake. Also, council support is essential because otherwise you get seen as just a fly-by-night service. So having the council involved, which is essential. The other thing is face-to-face. This isn't a chuck the bag out on bin day and have it collected. This service has to be for certain kinds of recovery, particularly for value retention. You need a face-to-face service, which is why the driver app and the user app are so firmly integrated. The other thing that's critical is the aftermarket reuse networks. These are essential, and our partners in Brighton have gone to a lot of effort to establish reuse channels, reuse pathways with these organizations. And there are more. These are just three. And I think then the other one is that the schools program is a really powerful narrative to get householders to engage in a way where they go, hold on, you're going to take it away, you're going to destroy my data, and you're going to give it to a poor kid who's not able to do their homework. And I don't have to do anything. And that's the critical piece, you know, we think. It was voted, as I mentioned, the Circular Economy Project of the Year, so great. I want to mention, just before we wrap, a project that we're hoping to do in 2022 here in Ireland in collaboration with Cork City Council and some others. And it's a project where we would deploy the platform, probably the next version of the platform with some more bells and whistles. But what's interesting about it is that, like all local authorities here in Ireland, there is now a mandate to put in place a decarbonisation strategy. And this is reflected geographically in all of the local authorities in Ireland having something called a decarbonisation zone. This is what Cork City Council one looks like. So we are proposing to replicate what we did in Brighton, plus more, maybe looking at more circular models across around 5,000 homes within this area here, which should be really interesting. The other thing that we're really excited about is we formed a partnership with an Irish-based company called No Carbon, who've created a platform that tracks and monitors essentially the carbon savings associated with reuse or optimum e-waste recycling. And we're hoping to integrate this into our platform so that householders have a very clear understanding of the implications for them of using the platform from a carbon saving perspective. So that's interesting. So I'm going to just finish up with a small quote that we think that there is no such thing as waste, but only scattered inventory. And we think that our platform, the ZeroNet, is the first platform that's been holistically designed as a circular logistics operating system dedicated to the creation, deployment, and scaling of zero waste and ultimately circular forms of consumption. Thank you very much.
You want to grab a seat?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, masks and wiring. So, folks, what we're going to try and do is just host an informal Q&A session with Elizabeth and Paul. Obviously, Elizabeth's presentation and the work we are doing and Paul's excellent presentation are probably to the forefront of your mind. But if there was any questions on any of the material that was shared this morning, we would be more than happy to try and address them to the best of our ability. And while you're thinking of any questions, I might just ask a general question to Paul and Elizabeth. It came up when I was speaking to my CEO at home last night, and she said, if the Netherlands are so far progressed in circular economy practices, why don't you just copy what they're doing? You know, is there a fast adopt and go solution? Now, I know it's a general question, but do you think there is an opportunity for us to look outside Ireland and accelerate our circular economy approach, or do we have to reinvent it ourselves internally all the time? So, open question for both of you.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. It's definitely the case that we can leverage best practice as it evolves in different jurisdictions, but many countries are, I think they're talking a talk which is somewhat ahead of their walking the walk. And an awful lot of places claim to have done an awful lot more than is really the case when you scratch underneath the surface. The reason why we're so excited about our opportunity is that we've looked far and wide at what's happening from a consumer engagement with the idea of circular economy, and it's so minuscule. The linear economy has grabbed 98% of the logistical landscape everywhere, and it's only tiny little footprints that are beginning to emerge. So I think, yes, Scotland in particular, I think Scotland is making extraordinary strides. The fact that they have a government agency dedicated to deployment of circularity is great, but there's so much to do. The linear economy still rules the roost. It's the king. So, you know, we need to try everything. But it's the consumer piece. What does it mean for me? And that's the bit that I've always been fascinated by. How do you get circularity into the household? And the easy solution has always been make it so simple that you'll just do it by default. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I thought your point on convenience was very honest, that sometimes, you know, the rhetoric is very lofty, but at the end of the day, people just want an easy life. And if you can make circular economy compliance easy and convenient, it's going to increase adoption.
So I would. I suppose there's a politician's answer that it's both.
I wasn't ready to put you on the spot.
There is, but there's no doubt, absolutely looking at best practice, and I think I covered that myself in my own presentation. We couldn't have got where we are in WEEE Ireland without the collaboration and the efforts and looking at best practice, and not just kind of the case studies, but really talking to our colleagues in the Netherlands, in Belgium, about what worked for them. However, we're also the envy of quite a lot of our partners in the WEEE Forum for how things are done here in Ireland, and sometimes we talk ourselves down. We have shorter decision-making chains. We've more collaboration. We're able to work with the Department of the Environment, with waste advisory groups, and that's not just us as an industry body. There's NGOs represented, there's local community groups represented. Access to EPA, Strive research programs, we feed into those that relate to WEEE and say what would work and what wouldn't work, what data sets can we share, what can we do. And yeah, the CircUléire program's the envy of some of my colleagues in the WEEE Forum as well. So I think the end of my answer is as well is, and maybe it references what you're saying there, we also have to tell people what they're already doing that is part of the circular economy. So we have to build on that positivity. And that was where we talked there about the White Goods Association and the role of repair. And they're so actively involved in that, in the development of those after-service models. So I needed to connect that and say that's a really important part. That is circular economy. It's not a new business model, but how can we build on that to deliver more under our circular aims? Yeah,
no, it's very fair. I loved the practical identification of the skills gap for repair of white goods. It's very straightforward. It's really a skills training program, but it's really what's required to extend the life of these products and minimize waste and associated challenges. So it's a good example of it. Yeah. There are some questions in the audience.
Is it working? Is it working? Yeah, so great. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Sorry, the masks. First of all, I'd just like to thank the speakers for your information and your energy. I have one question. Through your collaboration with CircUléire, have you seen Irish companies or companies also introduce being able to scale these new business models? Or are they just doing these small-scale pilots? So have you seen other companies like yourselves trying to scale these new business models or just do one-off pilots?
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good point. I think scale and impact, and I've talked about, look, there's 16 trainees starting in Dunshaughlin. That's not going to change everything now, but there's 3 other education training boards interested. How can we scale that up very quickly? And we've gone from talking about this idea, putting an application in this time last year, to a project that has a QQI qualification and is across the line in the space of 6 months. So, and again, that collaboration and that scale of impact. So And I see it across the members of our own scheme, WEEE Ireland. So we've 1,300 producer members. There are some very big names there, OEMs, and they're doing huge worldwide global programs that I'm trying to see how can we bring those onto the Irish marketplace. And then there's smaller, not so small indigenous companies like Urban Volt in lighting doing, you know, product as a service. So there is scale there, because you can't bring a sustainable business model about unless it is scale. But what's been lovely about the innovation space, I think is part of even the thematic working groups that we've done with CircULÉIRE, is that space to maybe look at smaller pilot ideas, and then how can we very quickly move them on. And that's actually very different to engagement with other groups over the past kind of decade or so, where maybe we're looking more in theory. This is all about let's get there in practice.
I would maybe add that from our perspective, we've really only worked outside of Ireland so far, and our plans, thanks to the engagement with Geraldine and her colleagues in CircULÉIRE, is to create this pilot project in Ireland to allow it to act as a test bed, especially for consumer engagement. So whilst the ostensible purpose of that project might be for the optimized recovery and, you know, reuse, etc., remanufacturing, all of those great things that begin with RE, for e-waste and potentially textiles, is to put the message out to the CircULÉIRE membership and the IMR membership that we can use this as a test bed for other projects. So somebody used the great phrase that the ZeroNet could be like a Trojan horse, that you get onto somebody's phone and then you start looking at other possible services, because we can deploy many, many different kinds of circular logistic possibilities.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic presentation, so I want to congratulate you both for the presentations. Mine is just to Elizabeth, in terms of the repair training program you mentioned. I wanted to find out, are you collaborating with schemes such as Springboard? Because it's important for people to know about this program. I'm just hearing about this program for the very first time, and you did mention that majority of the people who are doing the program, the repairs right now, are in their 50s, and they can't continue with that. And there's a need to get the younger people on board. So just to make sure that a wider spectrum of the society get to know about this, is there a way you are really publicizing it for people to get to know? Thank you.
Great question. Did you catch that?
Did not all of it, some of it. So can you help me out?
I think the essence of the question was very excited about the skills program that you guys are driving to improve the probability of repair and maintenance on white goods. But how do we broaden the knowledge, and can we make that program available through Springboard, for example? Because if there is significant demand for those skills, and we have employment challenges with certain sectors, you know, and it works, we need to expand the program as quickly as possible, I think was your point.
Yeah, really good point, and you're right. And as I said, we're only at the start of the course rollout, although we've been working really hard for the last 6 months to make sure that the curriculum is right, the industry engagement, which I'm so excited about. And that's why as well, project partnership is so important. So Fast Track into Technology have been doing elements of this work with kind of apprenticeships into the more technology space beforehand, and they had that knowledge gap and that engagement with the education training boards, and the candidate application and the screening and making sure that, you know, they're bringing people in the right way all goes through them. But yes, I'd be very hopeful with the interest we have from the education training boards, and I'm not an educator expert, so I want to let those experts do it. But what I have been asked is, well, can we do this for the brown goods sector? Can we look at this, you know, through the tech sector? We're always talking about phones and laptops, and there is different industry programs, but not necessarily in Ireland. And yeah, I think there's huge potential, and thanks for your compliments.
And to add, it is a great point, and Elizabeth, obviously with our training arm, we're going to be looking very closely at that program and see how can we accelerate the rollout of that once it gets traction and gets established as a viable training solution.
We need to breathe in for a few months and let it roll out, and I'm so and that's what I said. So we'll be talking differently next year about results and what we've learned, and hopefully an even bigger and better program. Thank you.
Great. There's another question in the audience.
Thank you. That was fantastic, and well done to CircULÉIRE and IMR. A fantastic. Is it on?
a fantastic organisation. Super, this question is for Paul. Paul, it's a really great company, but I'm wondering from a funding aspect. So, you know, we found with a lot of Irish companies looking to fund that there's a gap in scaling. A lot of early stage companies are getting small amounts of money, but really looking at companies like you to scale you really quickly. What has been your greatest challenge around funding at a scaling aspect?
Well, as ABBA said in 1977, money, money, and money. We kind of know what the solution looks like, but it's the most appropriate question because the linear economy owns all the dosh right now. It's driven, our whole economy is driven by linearity. And those of us with these kinds of ideas are generally begging for crumbs at the table to try and show that these models work. It's changing now, but if I told you the amount of times that I had been rejected for finance, I don't think you would believe me. There have been, I mean, countless. I stopped counting after 100, to be honest with you, but just managed to somehow keep going. But it is the single biggest, hardest thing because brands who want to engage in this, whilst they know they need to do it because it's the right thing to do, in many cases they have to put money in and not see any return on that for quite some time. They also have to disrupt their existing linear models, which are well honed and refined and well tuned, and they work in order to put in something. So I think it's the perfect question. It really is.
And if you were to make one change in that ecosystem, what would you think it needs to change to mobilize the finance for you?
Mandate some of these processes and basically make it more difficult from a regulatory perspective to do the wrong thing.
Very good. Okay. Folks, I think we'll leave it at that. I think that's all the questions from the audience this morning. Again, I want to thank Elizabeth and Paul for their presentations and sitting on the panel with me this morning. And now I'm going to hand back over to Geraldine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you, Elizabeth and Paul. Really interesting questions from participants. Oh. Now we're going to head to the next lineup of speakers. These are members of CircULÉIRE's delivery team. First up is Sophie Reynolds, circular economy technologist, who will be speaking about insights from our thematic working groups and the development of our sectoral guides. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sophie Reynolds and I'm a circular economy technologist with IMR, and we're Secretariat of CircULÉIRE. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to provide you with a high-level overview of some of the circular innovation opportunities that have been identified with input from CircULÉIRE's thematic working group, and also give you a teaser of some of our upcoming sectoral best practice guides about some of the insights that will feature in those documents. So in terms of our thematic working groups. So the aims of these thematic working groups that I'm going to share the innovation opportunity with you about were to convene a diverse pool of circular economy across sectoral ecosystem players so that the outputs and innovation opportunities identified were robust and informed by collective insights and experience to co-produce high quality thought leadership aimed at supporting Irish industry's circular transition, and very, very fundamentally, what I'm going to share with you today, to identify between 5 to 10 circular demonstration project ideas through ideation workshops with our panel members that have potential to make significant greenhouse gas and waste reduction savings for Irish industry. In terms of the 3 topics I'm going to tell you about today, the first was circular packaging and reusables, circular plastic, and circular design and redesign. And these were led by Mabbott and Associates. Circular plastics were led by AIT, and circular design and redesign was led by MCO, Strategic Design Consultancy based in Dublin. So in terms of some of the opportunities that we've highlighted, so through the circular packaging innovation opportunities. So firstly, there was cross-sectoral opportunities, so improving public and industry awareness of circular packaging solutions. So creating a centralized information hub aimed at making it easier for business to understand circular packaging options and solutions, and also creating a registry of circular packaging solution providers. And this is very much aimed at enhancing awareness raising, rethinking and recycling and reuse opportunities as well. Secondly, it was around developing local and regional infrastructure networks. So this is around developing local collection processing points for reusable packaging. Third, we had improving awareness of material types and circularity. So this is around developing packaging labeling systems for circularity. So this is around improving awareness as well around what material types are available and circularity opportunities. Then we had food, and we had sector-specific opportunities, so food and hospitality. So this is around implementing reusable food containers and returnable networks for the hospitality and takeaway industry. Fifth, we had food and drinks manufacturing. So developing monomaterial and standardized packaging to facilitate recovery and recycling for currently non-recycled or hard to recycle packaging. And sixth, we had transport and logistics sector focus. So returnable and trackable hoods that would replace single-use pallet wraps. And this is a real opportunity for B2B waste savings as well for Irish industry. So then we had the circular plastics thematic working group innovation opportunities that were identified. So first we had lab waste reuse and recycling. So the demonstrator here was around a pilot collection and reprocessing around high-grade plastic waste from medical research labs that could be transformed into functional reusable items that could be used within the lab sector. Secondly, we had reuse of bioreactors. This pilot was around assessing potentially high value items like bioreactors that could be sold in the life science sector. And the demonstrator here was around piloting a demonstrator around reuse, a reuse trial, assessing volumes, cost, life cycle analysis, and the like, as a way to, I suppose, disrupt this B2B waste stream. So then we had reusable coffee cup scheme. So it's said that 22,000 coffee cups are disposed of in Ireland every hour. And this reusable coffee cup scheme aimed to pilot a trial focused on the hospitality sector or university campuses. The other innovation opportunity identified was around redesign of EPS fish containers. So the idea here is to make EPS boxes designed so that they're more easily stackable for transport and that they can fulfill multiple functions, and also that they are potentially reusable as well. The next opportunity is around enhanced recyclability of meat packaging. So the demonstrator here was around producing demonstrator films with varying levels of EVOH as a barrier layer. And these materials would be collected, washed and reprocessed to assess the effect on their recyclability. Another very kind of timely, I suppose, innovation opportunity is around looking at the pilot opportunities to decontaminate and reuse PPE. So the aim of this study is to assess volumes, cost, develop decontamination and cleaning processes that could be trialed. Next, we have recycling marine waste. So this is a pilot for reusing, introducing reuse initiatives into marine plastic items like fishing nets. It could also be around testing out the feasibility of deposit return scheme focused on marine plastics like fishing nets as well. And finally, the last innovation opportunity identified by the Circular Plastics Group was co-processing of fiberglass waste. So tens of thousands of tons of construction and thermoset waste is produced in Ireland annually. This demonstrator is around assessing feasibility to use that waste as a fuel source in the production of concrete. Okay. So next we have the opportunities that were identified by the Circular Design thematic working group. So first we had feral furniture. This was around looking at product and service models that could be piloted around remanufacturing of office furniture aimed at extending their life. Next, we had Novum. So Novum is a refrigeration systems manufacturer, and they were also interested in looking at opportunities for new pilot product and service offerings that would require introduction of maintenance and repair services to customers with the aim of also tackling commercial food waste and emissions. GMIT, Letterfrac, were also interested in exploring pilots aimed at looking at modular design and various strategies for extending the life of high-end office furniture. Next, we had Cirtex. So Cirtex were, they're a new startup based in Longford, another CircUléire member, and they were interested in exploring a pilot aimed at upcycling fabrics in end-of-life mattresses that would be transformed into high-value products like insulation. Creative Futures Academy is a network, a new organization that's a coalition between UCD, NCAD and IADT. And they were interested in exploring opportunities for design and skills training frameworks relevant to Irish companies and wider creative industries. This particular idea has actually since morphed into being specifically focused on textiles and fashion because they joined forces with Design and Crafts Council of Ireland. So the next opportunity is circular metrics and measurement. So out of all of the opportunities identified, this one didn't have a clear industry owner, but it was based on a need that was widely identified as being very valid by a lot of the different panel members and industry members. And this is around actually introducing management and measurement systems for the impact of circular design. So I can report that some of these innovation opportunities have actually been advanced into CircUléire's innovation fund. So we will find out later this year which of them have actually been successfully awarded innovation funding to advance these pilots. Okay, so on to the sectoral best practices then. So in terms of what they are, so these are short 30-page documents with that aim to give an overview of circular economy best practices in a given sector. They aim to bring to life specific innovation opportunities and increase awareness around opportunities for replication and adaptation to the Irish context. They're really case study led. So it's fundamental to the approach to spotlight international industry-led best practices. So we case study 10 to 15 really great examples of initiatives, also highlight and illuminate the types of circular economy strategies that are being implemented in other contexts. And finally, it's around highlighting key policy and other enablers, helping to advance circular economy activity for the sector in other jurisdictions. So the first of these that we're producing this year is a sectoral guide for construction and built environment. And I'll give you a quick flavour of what that entails in just a sec. So as I mentioned, the first one is circular construction and built environment. In terms of some of the highlights of the industry-led best practices, we frame these around three core pillars. And these are circular business models, circular materials and resources, and circular processes for construction. So I'll give you a quick run through some of those. So the first is de CircUléire VAG, de Revemeer's Infrastructure as a Service pilot. And this is a Dutch 2-year pilot programme that involves cross-sectoral partners, municipalities, and obviously de Revemeer, who are a large-scale infrastructure construction company. And the programme aims to test out how product service model can apply to real-world, large-scale infrastructure projects. So this is really interesting in terms of changing the relationship between construction providers and the client, so that it's a longer-term kind of servicing, repair, maintenance model than we've typically kind of come to associate with these large-scale infrastructure projects. Secondly, we have the circular materials and resources example. And I think the really significant thing to highlight in terms of the circular opportunity here for Irish construction sector is that circular construction and demolition waste is the largest waste stream produced in Ireland and represents 1/3 of waste produced in the European Union. So some of the key examples that we highlight here are Rebrick. This is an automated solution to reuse bricks. It's developed by a Danish SME initially, and the technology has now gone to market. And for each clay brick that they reuse, this represents 0.5 of a kilo of CO2. So this is a considerable environmental saving if scaled. Next, we have the boiler house. So the boiler house may be familiar to some of you who might know it in Ireland as home to the Rediscovery Centre. And this is cited as being a 3D textbook in reuse. So it made the Rediscovery Centre and Dublin City Council made use of EU funding to actually fund the transformation of this building. And it's a really lovely 101 in actually embedding circular economy principles in construction projects like this. So paint was salvaged from local recycling centres during the rebuild, furniture and fittings destined for landfill were upcycled. So it's a real exemplar in terms of reuse. And then finally we have BAM. So BAM is Buildings as Material Banks. It's a pan-European project that seeks to enable systemic shift in the building sector by creating circular solutions. And does this through two kind of key levers in particular. So electronic material passports. These aim to be one-stop shop for material information and basically helping to store data around the value of these materials for recovery and reuse. And also reversible building designs. So that help enable resource efficient repair, reuse and recovery of the building materials, products and components. So this just gives you a really high level flavour of the kinds of pillars and strategies that are available to one sector specifically. This is the construction sector in this case, how we're actually bringing this to life through these kind of practical case study examples. And I suppose just to mention, we'll be producing this publication later this year. And there are others to follow too. So other topics will include food and drinks, agri-food and circular bioeconomy, fashion and textiles, and electronics and circular ICT. Just worth mentioning that these are really priority sectoral areas that are aligned with the Circular Economy Action Plan 2.0. So what I would say is please watch this space, follow us on social media, and you'll hear more announcements related to these upcoming sectoral guides in the near future. And do get in touch if you're interested in showcasing your case study example or if you want to feed in any way at all. So thank you very much.
Thanks to Sophie for joining us virtually to give us those insights. Definitely watch this space with regards to the sectoral guides that we'll be publishing in the new year. And next up we have Mohamed Abokersh, one of our senior circular economy researchers, giving you a walkthrough of our circular maturity model, which is launching at the Expo today. You can also get a live demo if you're here in person at the IMR stand. But over to Mo.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mohamed Abokersh, a senior circular economy researcher with IMR. Today, I'm going to present a small introduction regarding our circular maturity model toolkit. This is an online tool that enables business to explore capabilities necessary for transition to a circular business model and provide insights into how to improve your circular economy performance. As a small introduction for our work, I would like first to ask a question regarding what is the main driver for circular economy? Is the business in Ireland ready for circular economy in general? So as the main drivers for business here, first, the Climate Action Act 2021 commits Ireland to reach legally binding targets of net zero emissions no later than 2050 and cut of 51% by 2030. This includes two main budgets. The first carbon budget runs from 2021 to 2025. We'll see emissions reduced by 4.8 on average each year for the next 5 years. After that, the second carbon budget running from 2026 to 2030 will see emissions reduced by 8.3% on average each year for 5 years. In addition, during the COP26, Ireland updated National Climate Action Plan, where a detailed plan to achieve a 51% reduction in the overall GHG emissions by 2030 have been created. In general, or align with these figures, there are significant opportunity regarding circular economy concept, which can deliver the following. First, reduction in your carbon footprint inside your company or organization, resilience to resources price, increased touch point and a closer relationship with customer, innovation opportunities and access to new market, as well as a way to future-proof of your business against the national and EU legislation. In general, there are several sectors which is having a great opportunity for applying the circular economy in Ireland. First, food and beverage. Secondly, pharmaceutical, chemical, construction, retail, and food services. So now you are wondering what step to take next in your journey towards circular business model. To do that, actually, you are looking toward your business model from different lenses, as well as rethink how you do business in general. Collaboration within the supply chain or across sectors, embracing culture changes, investing in capacity building. So for doing all of that, the circular maturity model toolkit can help. So what is actually the CMM model or the circular maturity model? So the maturity model, it's an online self-assessment tool developed by the IMR for industry. It's evolved from an analytics maturity model, which developed by the IMR data analytics team in 2019. The CMM goal in general is to help companies to understand the steps required to transition from a linear to circular business model. It's developed based on identification and reviewing key maturity model from industry, consultation, and academia, with comprehensive analysis to identify the key building blocks and combining the best aspect of each into our tool. The main observation of the review tool that very few framework speak about the dynamic interdependency between categories, and as well as not all the frame embrace the key enablers. While our tool novelty in general, it's combined the key building blocks, dynamic flows, and key enablers. In general, the CMM or the maturity model, it's divided into two main parts. The first part is dedicated to test the organization readiness for circular economy, let's say a macro level, while the second part is dedicated to dive into the circular activity into the organization with emphasizing into case studies, KPIs to support the recommended solutions for your organization, which is speaking more or less in the macro scale. So like we have divided actually like our tool into five main maturity level, which is covering like 10 dimensions and having around like 83 sub-dimension, 83 questions. And we divided actually the maturity in five inside your organization into 5 levels, starting from initial, which is the first level, then going to the beginner, which including like a lot of experimental testing, and then going to the intermediate, which you are almost in the middle management or is making a decision regarding circular economy level, then the advanced level, and finally the optimized level where you have already including all the possible action regarding circular economy inside your organization. So how actually use the tool? First, you have simply to start it with register yourself and register your company, industry size, and as well as the type of industry. Within the tool, actually, the tool actually supports the singular and multi-user inside the users of the tool. So to access the tool, you have to contact the IMR and define the required user within your company and define how is your company representative, who is the company representative and his email. Once the IMR gets this info, the IMR will create an account for your company and send you the username, the password for the admin user who is responsible to assign the assessment for a number of his employees. Once the selection is done, the employee will receive an email with all the details regarding the journey. Once each employee finishes the assessment, the company representative will receive a notice on his email, as will he will have an access to output of each employee and an average report of all the employees he has in his company. So after registration and setting the required sets, it's a time to start your evaluation. The tool is very easy to use. You have to answer a set of questions. These questions actually reflect the current and the target level of circularity you would like to achieve in the next 5 years. This question covers different capabilities, dimensions in your organization, such as strategy, culture, collaboration, innovation, and circularity. The output of the report, it's having actually as a part of by the end of the questionnaire, you will receive a report which you may export in PDF. This report will provide you insight into your organization, current level of circular economy maturity, insights into your organization target level of circular economy maturity, recommendation for improving your organization circular economy maturity. On the other hand, it will offer you a benchmark for comparing your company circular performance with other companies. As well as you will receive a guidelines regarding the next step with explaining the technology and tools as well as skills requirements. It will also provide you with references to inspire you with a set of case study. This part is still under development, of course, but it will come by the end of the year. So what actually is the main benefit for using the CMM model or the circular maturity model? First, it will help you to understand the circular economy capability inside your company, as well as it will help you to establish a circular maturity baseline and benchmark. In addition, it will help you with a set of recommendations to improve your circular economy performance. It will offer you some kind of a visualized reporting tool based on the PDF exported outside of the tool. And finally, it's an ease of use and support a group of assessment inside your company, a singular and a multi-user. So if you wanted to roll out the circular maturity model toolkit across your organization, reach us out through our email circular@imr.ie. Thanks a lot, and that's all from my side.
Thank you to Mo, and as I said, if you'd like a demo, Mo is actually standing representing CircULÉIRE at IMR's exhibition stand. Next up, we have Dr. Damian Coughlan, another member of CircULÉIRE's team, and he's actually here to talk about another project that IMR is involved in, highlighting how CircULÉIRE leverages European projects as well as national projects for our members. So I'd like to hand over to Damian, who's joining us virtually to talk about CircThread, building the digital thread for the circular economy.
Hello. My name is Damian Coughlan, and I'm a senior circular economy researcher with IMR and technical lead for the CircThread project. CircThread is a Horizon 2020 funded project and is about building the digital thread for the circular economy. The circular digital thread is situated at the interface between sustainable design and manufacturing, circular economy, and digitalization. The aim of the project is to develop an open source digital platform that makes it possible for manufacturing companies to collect, utilize, and securely share data about the different phases of a product's full life cycle. The focus of this project is on white goods appliances. The CircThread consortium encompasses 31 partners from 12 European countries with €9 million secured in funding over 4 years. The CircThread project will develop 3 pilot programs in Slovenia, Spain, and Italy. How we access, manage, and use the information from our product's life cycle can enable and facilitate our transition towards a circular economy. The circular economy requires us to rethink how we design, make, and use things in our day-to-day life to enable extended lifespans, better repairability, reuse, and better recycling, interconnect the information along the life of a product from concept to retirement, and decision-making to shift to a circular economy, and to develop and test an open source software platform within the next 4 years, and to enable digital exchanges of data across the extended product lifecycle. The CircThread project will enable the capturing of data associated with a product and its lifecycle, for example, as a list of parts in the product, the materials and chemicals they may contain, the product's reuse history, or the repair logs. Data will be linked to software services to provide decision recommendations. Cloud-based platform will become available in 2025 and it will be equipped with services for collaboration, trust, and security. The platform will be tested in 3 pilots, and testing will be undertaken by manufacturers, repairers, retailers, collectors, and recyclers. CircThread will bring the benefits of a circular economy closer to reality through the following key innovations: creating a digital identity of our appliances and linking all parties across the life cycle, making it possible to link information from the manufacturer to the appliance digital identity, allowing repair companies to recover as many parts as possible from used appliances, and empowering collectors to decide what is best for used appliances, be it reuse, remanufacturing, or recycling. Making a continuous improvement planning process for appliance lifespan extension. Making it easier to know what chemicals and critical raw materials are in appliances for recycling purposes. Finally, empowering citizens to make better purchasing and use decisions for repair and lifespan. IMR's role in CircThread is as technical team member and working in an expert consultant role. The project utilizes the expertise in IMR sustainable manufacturing and digitization teams in circular economy and manufacturing systems knowledge. IMR is also a task leader in Work Package 8 for the Circular Economy Services Hackathon. And should you require further information on this project, please contact me at damian.coughlan@imr.ie, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Damian, for that overview of CircThread. And as I said, it's just one example of how IMR not only leverages CirCULÉIRE and the activities that we do through that public-private partnership, but also national and European projects like CircThread, which are going to unfold over the next number of years. So what I wanted to just do before myself and Maurice do some closing remarks is just give you a bit of a feel for effectively what CircULÉIRE has been doing, bringing to life and bringing together what my colleagues have already highlighted, and then thinking about what's happening next year. So next, I have a slide. So Maurice showed this slide at the beginning of today's conference, highlighting the key areas of how we support industry, be it awareness raising, knowledge sharing. I've modified knowledge sharing because next year there's going to be a really big emphasis on our policy engagement in light of Les Carberry from DEC highlighting this morning about the unfolding and the publication of the circular economy strategy, and the fact that with that comes sectoral roadmaps. And it's really important for industry alongside other societal actors to feed into the path with which the government is going to mandate and especially roll out over the next number of years to hit those targets, to have a systemic circular economy implemented in Ireland by 2030. But in terms of the stuff we've spoken about, all the outputs that Sophie, Damian, Mo highlighted, those all sit on one of our biggest assets in CircULÉIRE, our open access knowledge repository. This is the first of its kind in Ireland. It is essentially a curated collection of sectoral roadmaps, case studies, policy documents from around Ireland, Europe, and further afield. And it's about showcasing and making it easy for industry to access best practice. Something that Paul McSweeney in his presentation highlighted, the CEO of Loopstore. We're bringing him to Ireland virtually in a couple of weeks' time to help him share his insights as a serial circular economy entrepreneur to scale circular strategies. And then again, we heard Sophie highlighting some of the key insights and demo project ideas that have come from our thematic working groups. Again, the outputs of these are all sitting open access on our knowledge library. The other thing I want to just flag is these are some of the topics that the industry network are thinking about and will vote on in the early new year to focus our thematic working groups for 2022. So there was a question earlier from Mary Cronin from Upthink about the role of finance. Paul McSweeney highlighted the challenges and the rejections he's had over the last decade. So financing the circular economy and understanding the barriers to how to leverage finance is really important and could be one of our thematic working groups next year. The other, we spoke about circular measurement. Andy Kerr from Climate-KIC spoke about the need to measure. We as CircULÉIRE again are working with our members on a balanced scorecard to understand and measure their performance and impact. Our circular maturity model also deals with this idea of how to get a sense of where you are in this landscape. Circular labeling, Industry 5.0, an area close to IMR's heart. Solutions for food contact materials, and then another, advancing the circular economy in highly regulated areas. We heard from Austin Geraghty earlier today saying the circular economy is part of Hovione's sustainability journey, but the reality is in highly regulated sectors, companies cannot do it alone. They need to engage with the Food Safety Authority, HIPRA, EPA, DAFM, and all the other regulators to find a way to actually make circular economy possible in these sectors. Another key area of our work, and as I said, I slightly modified the vector of impact, so something we've seen really grow over the last year is our policy engagement. I had the honor of being invited to the Oireachtas to give feedback on behalf of CircULÉIRE's industry members. And as I said again, next year with the publication of the Circular Economy Bill, the publication of the Circular Economy Strategy, you will essentially see a call from DEC, and they said it earlier today, to engage with industry, to get their views, to feed into these roadmaps and frame implementation. And CircULÉIRE is playing a key role on behalf of our members to feed into these channels if they do not have the capacity to feed in directly themselves. And again, an example of this was our public consultation. We ran a town hall with our members to basically make sure that their voices from the different sectors we represent are heard by DEC and EPA and the like. With regards to capacity building, this reflects a continued rollout of our circularity assessments, an interactive circular economy framework, and the online maturity tool that you heard introduced by my colleague Mohamed. In terms of the assessments, this is back to basically the first steps, the basics of what you should do if you're embarking on this journey. Measure, you need a baseline. The next, understand where the organization's proverbial head is at. What is the level of understanding of circular economy? Do you have buy-in across your organization? Do you have capabilities? What does this mean for you and your business? How do you create that dialogue within your organization? The other thing is, it's really important to map your flows. You need to understand not only the numbers, but also visually mapping material, energy, and water resources in your organizational boundaries and also in your supply chain can help you to identify structural waste that you can then turn into a circular economy opportunity. Understanding opportunities and then developing a plan to how and what makes sense with regards to low-hanging fruit, medium opportunities and longer-term opportunities, as Austin brought to life, as Dawn Meets, WEEE Ireland, and Paul McSweeney from the ZeroNet have framed. And then ultimately, I think it's been a red thread throughout today, is collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. The circular economy is not something that an organization can do by themselves. Often it requires supply chain, but also cross-sectoral collaboration to really tap into the value of the circular economy and unlock it. One of the examples of an area of work that we've had under development over the last while has been a circular economy framework for manufacturing. And our members said to us, this framework is great, but oh my goodness, what is a strategy? Where are the examples? What is an enabler? Can you bring it to life? And we said, okay, we will. Give us some time and we will. And what we've developed and what you're looking at is a snapshot from a sectoral-based framework which is interactive, specifically for the food sector. So effectively, it's an interactive infographic that allows you to hover over every sector, every part of a product life cycle, and it gives you information to bring the circular economy to life, to demystify what these terms mean, to showcase that these things are being done in all different parts of the world and sometimes in Ireland. And this is something that we're rolling out with different sectors. So for example, specifically, what does the circular economy mean for textiles? What does it mean for the built environment? What does it mean for automotive? What does it mean for the likes of packaging companies, etc., etc.? And then you've heard Mo's presentation around a maturity model, so I won't linger too long. But ultimately, again, what this is about supporting companies to, through an online interactive forum, start this conversation, understand where they are, and take stock of effectively what capabilities they will need to embrace and transition from a linear to a circular model. In terms of our demonstrators, we heard from WEEE Ireland, we heard from Dawn Meats. We've funded 5 demos to date across a number of different sectors. We heard from Freefoam Plastic CEO Kevin Cloonan in the earlier videos. And effectively, these are all about supporting companies to pilot with a view to ultimately scaling these pilots after the demos are complete. In terms of, Maurice highlighted this earlier, it's really important for us to support new ventures in the space. We heard Paul McSweeney highlight the fact that it's taken him 10 years to get his business off the ground. He has been ahead of his time. He actually joined CircUléire as a new venture member in our first cohort in 2020. He's come on and then followed on to become a full member. But effectively, this program is the first of its kind to focus not on clean tech ventures, not on sustainability ventures, not on renewable energy ventures, but circular ventures and the unique challenges that they face in trying to get market traction. I'm delighted to announce that we have 5 more ventures in this program. Again, a range of sectors from circular bioeconomy to packaging to the role of data in enabling transparency and furthering circularity to plastics. So lastly, just to kind of bring this to a close, the other key, and again I said it before, collaboration is the secret ingredient in all of this. I can't emphasize it enough. And that's something that, again, that CircUléire is really trying to foster. At a national level, we're very active in the Waste Advisory Group on behalf of our members. We also, David McCormack, my colleague, chairs the NSAI Technical Committee, Mirror Committee for the ISO Circular Economy Standards Development. Those are something that are going to come out over the next 18 months. The next 6 months are critical with regards to getting industry feedback into those processes. So a little bit of a shout out, if anyone has an interest, do reach out. Another area we engage and have engaged to date is through the OECD policy dialogues. There is a case study on Ireland and its journey, its governance structure, having been developed by the OECD with stakeholders and the likes of CircUléire strategic partners, DEC, the EPA and Climate-KIC, that is forthcoming early next year. And then again, another first for CircUléire and for Ireland, we are the first EU-dedicated circular hotspot. This is a global network led by Holland Circular Hotspot, which we're very proud to be part of. And through our work with them this year, we have been involved in developing a brief on hotspots of opportunity for different Irish sectors. We also hosted a circular construction and demolition webinar. The recordings are up on our social media. But effectively, what I'm trying to highlight here is how we bring to bear expertise not only in Ireland to bear, but also from further afield. So that webinar had experts from the Netherlands, which Maurice mentioned is a front runner in this space. And everything that CircUléire does is about trying to bring expertise and knowledge and people together to collaborate to unlock this in the context of Irish industry. I'm also delighted to announce that we have been part of a bid led by one of our collaborators, the Rediscovery Centre, the National Centre for the Circular Economy, the Eastern Midlands Waste Region, Dublin City Council. And this bid was basically to the Global Hotspot Network to host an event to showcase and further develop and inspire circular economy in Ireland. And based on the Government of Ireland's pivot in the last 2 years towards embracing this agenda wholeheartedly, the Rediscovery led that bid, and it was announced this week that we have secured this event in 2023. Last but not least, it comes back to our members. Ultimately, everything we do, the CircUléire is a public-private partnership that is led by industry for industry, and it's about accelerating knowledge sharing, creating a community of practice. And we're very proud, as Maurice highlighted earlier, to be working with these pioneers who are doing it because it is the right thing to do. The compliance, the regulatory tsunami, it's coming. We heard from Les Carberry this morning about the rake of legislation that is coming from Europe and how that's going to also be transposed and complemented by national measures. But ultimately, from our perspective, these are some of the front runners in Ireland. Very last but not least, I just want to give you some an overview of some of metrics around our numbers, bearing in mind that we kicked off in January 2020, just before the pandemic. So it's been a challenging environment, but a kudos to the CircULÉIRE delivery team and to our members for sticking the course. We've grown from 25 founding members. We had our ministerial launch possibly this day last year, also virtual, with Minister Eamon Ryan. And since then, we've grown to 39 members. We've managed to implement, despite COVID, 14 in-depth circularity assessments with our founding members. We've developed 2 feasibility studies and 1 sectoral material flow analysis. We've funded, and these are in progress. So as Elizabeth O'Reilly from WEEE Ireland highlighted, she will be back next year to talk about the results as opposed to give you the highlights. But essentially, those 5 circular innovation demonstrators that CircULÉIRE has funded, that includes 15 actors who are working together in different configurations to essentially unlock and understand the barriers to piloting and scaling circular innovation. As you heard before, we've done a number of different thematic working groups, and we've got 3 more planned for next year. And we have 5 ventures who've gone through our new venture program and 5 more who are currently in situ who I announced. Again, I just wanted to bring to your attention that we have a skeleton staff here today, and I just want to acknowledge the wealth of experience within IMR, the support we received from Maurice O'Connell as CircULÉIRE's executive sponsor, our support from IMR's marketing team, Louise, Gary, Mark. Again, this is a big effort from a very small team to do something that matters for the Irish economy. Thank you. I'd now like to just invite Maurice back onto the stage to wrap up today's conference.
Thank you very much, Geraldine. Look, I thought it was challenging, first of all, obviously, because we had speakers who were not present, but I hope you got a sense of the I suppose the passion and the commitment that's involved in this program, certainly from an IMR perspective, certainly from our members' perspective. I think there was great convergence as well, listening to some of the government speakers in terms of what they're trying to accomplish, and there's clear energy and drive in trying to implement policies and regulation. Overall, I suppose I'm proud, first of all, to get the chance to work with people like Geraldine and David, who isn't here today, driving this program. It's really, as Geraldine mentioned, it's been challenging because we really got traction just at the start of COVID. So that did present an obstacle in a practical sense. But despite that, I think it's very clear from the information that Geraldine shared at the end and the testimony that all of the members shared with you, that it's a very, very valuable program, and we really are making a difference, and it's going very well overall. Geraldine, are there any highlights you'd like to mention from today that you thought were significant and noteworthy?
Thanks, Maurice. Yeah, I think, again, just echoing your comments about the presentations and the feedback and overview of the policy landscape in the context of post-COP from DEC and EPA. You know, this is something, as I mentioned in my previous presentation, that the government of Ireland has done an about turn. You know, if you look at the presentation with regards to the waste statistics that Mary Frances Rochford highlighted, 2 decades of that waste climb using landfill levies to reduce it, and still our waste continues. However, in 2018, 2019, there was a concerted effort by a number of different government departments like then Debbie, now Dietz, DAFM, DEC, and others to essentially look at what is the future potential for the circular economy in Ireland. And then from that came the National Climate Action Plan, from that came the Waste Action Plan for a Circular Economy, and now the most recent Climate Action Plan, carbon budgets, and effectively the Circular Economy Bill and the Circular Economy Strategy that are forthcoming. I think, again, it's really interesting to reflect back on what Andy Kerr from Climate-KIC highlighted with regards to the fact that we are in a situation where we need new models of innovation. We need new approaches. He highlighted the different systems levers we need. This is fundamentally, if we're going to turn the ship around in the next decade, we need innovation as unusual. We cannot use the same methods that we thought would work before. And I guess it gives me great excitement that we have an actor like Climate-KIC showing us and showcasing the work that they're doing around systems change and looking at those systems levers to really make sure that what we're doing is ultimately going to deliver on what Les Carberry highlighted as the ambition of the Government of Ireland to make sure that circular economy is systemically embedded in the Irish economy, and that it also is a driver for essentially sustainable regional growth and essentially a driver for sustainable society where citizens and industry are benefiting from this new economic development paradigm.
Thanks, Geraldine. The last thing I'd say, you know, if there's any people who've sat in the audience this morning and they're representing companies and they're thinking, yeah, this is something we would like to build our knowledge on or get more involved in, we'd obviously love to have you join CircULÉIRE actively, because I think you heard from the participants there's huge value in collaboration and knowledge sharing across different industrial sectors. It's tricky and each sector has slightly different challenges, but I would invite you to contact Geraldine or myself if you're interested in participating, or go to our website that Geraldine highlighted for some shared knowledge that we have in terms of what we're doing and how you might progress it in your own business. But please do follow up with us if you have a general interest. Okay, I think we'll close it at that. Thanks very much, folks, for your time and attention.
Thank you.